only a small group right now. Come on now. Are we live? Why is my YouTube
says in the corner live.
Oh, yeah, we're live. Okay, very good. All right. Hello to the 4 people watching so far. This is the RPG Pundit, and this is going to be the RPG Pundit Encounter. I've been running late. My encounter today has been that I've been running late the entire day. I barely got here on time. I still haven't finished percolating my coffee. But while we wait, we're gonna, like as usual in this show, because I have no technological savvy to like distract you with video clips like Diversity and Dragons does, or some of these other guys. I'm just going to be saying hello to people and talking about stuff that isn't actually the main topic before I introduce our special guest for tonight, who is Josh from Stellagama. And you guys should let me know, because I've been like so busy today I haven't even looked at X or whatever, right? So if there's any brand new news on the RPG front, then feel free to put it in the chat. Hello, Boomflyer. Good evening. First one to comment. Congratulations, for what that matters. And oh geez, oh my, I need to clean these glasses too. Been running around all day. There we go. Rare view of the pundit without glasses on. So if I get this right, otherwise I'm going to have to make dead air. Oh, yeah, that's much better. Okay. Hello, Bo Paints Minis. How's it going? I've seen you here before. Curious Ponderings. Hello. Hope you're doing well. What's the topic? Well, the topic tonight is going to be largely science fiction. I'm guessing, because it's something that both my guest and myself have very much on our minds. My guest probably is more frequently interested in science fiction, because he is one of the people in the team that does like the OSR, but it's the OSR for Traveler instead of for D&D, right? And it's really interesting. We're going to talk about Traveler. We're going to talk about what they're doing. We're going to talk about whatever new projects they've got and what have you. And we're, of course, also going to talk about Sons of Heaven, my RPG that is coming out very, very soon. And, oh, damn, you know what I should have done is I didn't even think of this. I'm so stupid. What I should have done is use today to post the like cover image of Sons of Heaven. I don't know if Mad Scribe is out there somewhere. Send me, if you're listening to this and it's not too late, send me a JPG of the cover of Sons of Heaven so we can show it for the first time here on the StreamYard studio, because I think I know how to put a picture up on this thing. I think either that, or I'll kill the entire chat and that'll be the end of this episode. So if that happens, please forgive me. We would reschedule with Josh.
I'm just looking for my copy of Star Adventure. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you're a Star Adventurer fan, huh? There you go.
I got a couple of your books. Not I don't like collecting books for the sake of collecting, because I have limited space and budget. But no, Star Adventure was it's solid. It's solid. So we're
it was something it was actually originally it was issue 100 of the Pundit Files, right?
Right.
No, of the RPG Pundit Presents, rather, which was the earlier periodical I did, right? It was the 100th issue, so it was bigger than usual. It was like 30 some pages, right? Yeah. And it was really a challenge for me to try to create a generic space opera OSR rule set that was something that would function for everything. Right now, it turned out to be really, really popular. I wasn't sure if I thought it might not do better than most of the other Pundit Presents issues, but no, the people really liked it, which is great. And it's that is also basically the kernel, the central core of the same rules. It is now a gold bestseller, right? That is going to be the same rules in Sons of Heaven, but there we're going to be modifying it to be for the specific setting of Sons of Heaven, which now actually is a setting, right? The other one was just kind of generic, sort of Star Warsy, with no element of lore or anything else. But here, Sons of Heaven is going to be basically, well, I've been terming it like two things: the Bronze Age collapse in space, or just Jews in space.
That one's been done. But
Mel Brooks, yeah.
Did you include like world building tools in Sons of Heaven?
Yeah, I've got a whole mechanic, and of course, just like one would expect, even though it is not the same mechanic, that design for creating, star systems and planets, and then the cultures in the planets and all of that, it derives originally from Traveller, right? Because that became the mechanic per excellence to do that sort of thing. Right now, of course, I've changed it around quite a bit, but and it's not as, how would you put it, mechanistic as the Traveller one is, right? But it is a way that you can generate an entire star system or an entire planet, the society, all the problems it's having, whatever it's got, its tech level, its former tech level, all these sorts of things that will.
Nice, that's good. The tech level and former tech level, that's good.
Yeah, a handful of roles, and you will be able to have a planet that you as the DM will know what it's about, and then it becomes very easy to introduce it even in mid-play.
Yeah, that's it's so essential for like big science fiction like that. It's so essential, we've done it now for Cepheus and for FTL Nomad, and each time it's a little tweak, and each time it's like, how do we do, And what's so funny is just how much of an implied setting is in these random generators, even if you're like, no, you can do whatever you want, but it ends up there is some kind of a weird implied setting in there. It's kind of fun to watch it happen.
It is. That's one of the great secrets of those kind of generator mechanics, right? So it creates the implied setting. Bo, thank you very much for liking my Poland RPG, which is the Baptism of Fire. Also a gold bestseller, I believe. And Bo Paints Minis, you said here, I saw that Rob Kuntz is releasing his definitive edition of the World of Greyhawk. That's kind of news. Yes, it is. But I actually knew that for ages now. And the reason why I knew that is because I made the terrible mistake at some point of promoting Mad Scribe Press, of saying, these guys are like the best publishers. And Rob Kuntz, who, follows me, we follow each other, he listened. And so he is now working with Mad Scribe. So it's not just going to be Rob Kuntz, it's going to be a Mad Scribe production, which, means it's going to be a very high quality. But the reason I'm regretting this now is because there's a queue. Right, so I've just finished Sons of Heaven, and Rob had to wait for that to get his thing going. But now, my Roman game that is coming out at some point, I'm also doing it with Mad Scribe, but I'm gonna have to wait until Rob's Greyhawk book comes out. I don't know anything about what's in it exactly. But somehow, I suspect, I'm willing to bet, having not seen any of the three books, that Kuntz's book will, at least in some sense, be much more useful than either the one Luke Gygax is doing or the one that Wizards of the Coast is doing in-house, right? Because those, you just know they're going to be useless. Whereas Rob Kuntz, there's going to be something worthwhile there, even if it's mostly like history or nostalgia or whatever, right? But there'll be something, and it'll be very beautiful as a book because it's Mad Scribe Press. Got some people. Okay, well, we're getting now. We're at 10 something, and we've got 20 people already. That's a pretty good amount. That's not bad. So we're gonna start here momentarily. I'm gonna take a moment here to see if I can do my coffee magic before we begin. So that assuming that yes, it is done. All right. This is a Vietnamese press, which is, to me, the best way to do iced coffee, right?
We got an FTL Nomad question.
Go for it.
No. So first of all, thank you for picking up FTL Nomad. It's thank you. No, it did not come from FTL Nomad because it came from the fact that Nomad. I actually suppose it came from nomads and travelers and wanderers. I wouldn't know. It was Omer's idea. Actually, I'm the one responsible for bringing in the dice the dice mechanic that eschews most of the modifiers. Yeah, that was my addition to the design process. Well, one of them, the big one. It was yeah. So no, it's not. But that's a good pun. I like it. It's a nice pun. I'm always down for a good gaming pun. So
I have to say, I didn't. Usually, I have mostly interviewed people who are from the D&D OSR here, right? And I had no idea whether my viewers would how they would react. Although, obviously there's a lot of old school gamers that love the Cepheus engine and love Traveler and what have you, right? But looking at the numbers that we have right now, we're at 15. This is where you usually don't get to 15 until like the half hour mark, right? So I think that we're going to have a good crowd here. Some of that is probably some of your fans, but I get the feeling that my fans, I see names that I always encounter here at the encounter. So that's not bad. So we're going to start in just a second here. First off, though, let me, for the first time, tell you, I'll probably repeat this like at least twice when there are more people in. This live stream right now, as it is playing, is not monetized. If any of you would like to give a super chat, that would be extremely welcome. I've recently started a new policy, which is that anytime I have a video or live stream that somebody gives me a super chat or a super thanks, means I have to post a new picture of Domino. In case you're not sure who that is, this is Domino. Sorry, Domino. And I'll put a new one in my posts if I get at least one super chat. I do not, unlike many other shows, I do not demand that you do a super chat for me to read what you posted. Okay, because there are a lot of these YouTubers who have just made that policy, and that's probably a really wise policy on their part, because I can see they get like way more super chats than I do, but that's because someone has something they really want to say. But I can't do that, because I look at all of these comments, and I want to answer the ones that I'm interested in. I'm not going to just limit it to the people who are willing to pay for it, right? So if you want to give me, in other words, super chats, you will be very, very welcome to do so. Look at this. This is the showstopper right here. Ow. Okay. Yeah, but if you have something interesting to say and you don't have super chat money, just post it. And if I find it interesting, I'm going to talk about it, right? I like to have lots of interaction with the crowd. If you end up having questions for Josh, if you already know him, you can go ahead right now and ask him whatever horrible and embarrassing questions they might have for him. But if you don't know him yet, then you're going to find out about him here in our introduction, and you're going to find out what this is about. So, pardon me a moment. This is all right. So, I think we might as well get started here. We got 15 people, 15 minutes in. Everyone else will just have to catch up if they get here late. $5 super chat from MK Ford. Are there? Okay, this is obviously for you, Josh. Are there plans to add random character generation to an FTL Nomad supplement?
I suppose not off the top of right now. No, we can get into what we are planning on releasing in the next 6 months or so to a year. A random character gen supplement would be pretty short, I think. Right? I mean, Nomad character generation is pretty fast, so I guess it would be it wouldn't be too bad, too hard to write. So we can probably swing it, but it's not on the menu right now. It's certainly not in the queue right now, but I'll send that one up the chain for sure. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so I don't know, Josh, if you've seen episodes of the RPG Pundit Encounter before, but it is essentially a long-form interview format. I already told you that off screen, of course. The thing is that we have a tradition here in the show that the first and last questions are always the same questions for everybody who gets them, right? And I guess we can start out. We're going to start with the first official question, because everything up to now has just been us waiting for enough people to come in. And the first official question is, hang on, I've got to find my, good Lord, I am really out of it today. I've got to find where my questionnaire is. I must have rebooted at some point. Hang on here, documents. There it is. Okay. So the question is, you've been involved here in Stellagama Publishing. You might have done some other stuff. You're probably going to tell us what your background was and all this. But you've definitely been involved with Stellagama for a while. You've been involved in the OSR for a while, and then in the old school gaming scene, let's say, not just the D&D OSR, but other stuff. And you've probably interacted with quite a lot of people in many different ways. The first question is, who has been good to you and who has been bad to you? This is your chance to praise those who have helped you out along the way, and especially, although nobody is brave enough to do it, to call out the assholes that tried to take you down.
Okay, well, it's actually I've watched a few of these, a lot of these actually, and so I've been thinking about this question. Who's been good to me? Well, I'm going to start with who's been good to me personally, yep. And then I'm going to, because I'm here for Stellagama, I'll talk about Stellagama a bit. Sure. Personally, I mean, it's actually three people. The first two are Omer and Richard, the other two principals at Stellagama when I joined it. And the third one is my wife, Heidi, who what happened was that I had written up a big 80-page supplement setting for my own use for Stars Without Number, and it was 15, 16 planets or something like that, systems, and it was very detailed, and I really was, I had interacted with Omer and Richard before because they had published something for the Mongoose Traveler license, the original one, called Outer Veil. It was their own setting. It was a massive setting. And I said, well, I had interacted with them about questions about their setting. And then and my wife said, can you, why don't you just send them the manuscript and see if they'll publish it? So I was like, all right. So sent it in, and they replied with, "We not only want to publish it, we want you on board as a part of the team." And I was like, awesome, which was very unexpectedly like amazing and good. And we can talk about my role. I have a main role at Stellagama often, and we'll talk about that. I'm the editor. I'm the main editor for a lot of the work, so we'll talk about that. And more generally for Stellagama, I mean, we have to talk about the fans. They love us. It's great. It's been so much fun interacting with the fans, Discord and Facebook, and it's mainly Discord these days. Actually, we get emails, we get questions, we get all sorts of stuff, and it's very positive in general. I can count on like one hand the number of sort of negative things that have been sent our way. Yeah, really supportive fan base. The Traveler CPS fans are they're pretty great. Funny and yeah, that's it. It's been that I think that pretty much encapsulates it. So for me, right? Let's see. Who's been bad to us? Well, I had to think about this because it's hard. But then I thought someone asked like, what was the greatest challenge? There we go. The greatest challenge in creating FTL Nomad, and that's who's been bad to us. Hamas. And I wish it was like, it's actually quite literal. We had started talking about a new rule system, and so we decided we'd have a Zoom meeting. We very rarely have these, conference calls because, Omer's in Israel, and then there's like 2, 3. The other 3 of us are usually we're all in Eastern Standard Time or in like Central Mountain Time. I don't remember where Richard is specifically. So we had this Zoom meeting on the morning of October 7th, 2023. And so we're having this Zoom meeting, and I was following the news, and Omer lives in the south of Israel, and in the middle of the meeting, he has to leave because there's a rocket attack. And we're like, oh crap. And so, it's sort of this weird sort of thing where there's 4 of us in the Zoom meeting, and one of the chairs is empty for half an hour, 40 minutes.
So wait a minute. So you're answering this question. This is like the best answer I've ever heard, right? So I asked you like, who is good for you in the industry and your RPG ambitions, and who is bad for you? The good, you've named the people that are good. The bad, well, the Iranian regime, and their network of terrorism, right?
Yeah.
That answer. I mean, just that. I mean, if you were the one who was there, anyways, we got to get Omer to actually
but understand what happened, right? So like Omer does all the layout, right? And like everything has slowed down. So at one point he had to evacuate from the south, and he has to go north, live with his parents, and then he has to go back south from the north, and like he's got to work, and like the war's been going on for 3 years, and it's a lot harder to get things done. Just everything slows down, and they're like to dovetail that, like all the publishing.
This is like a revelation for me because if you've watched some of my shows, the last question you're going to be asked is how much of a nerd are you, right? And unfortunately, that was like a great shtick, but one of the earliest interviewees I ever got was Driving and Dragon, and Driving and Dragons is a guy who only plays D&D, and he fixes cars and he shoots things, right? And I'm like, well, none of the other guys are ever going to beat this, right? So what I need is for you next to get Omer to come on to this show, right? And then when I ask him the question, go, well, I play D&D. Maybe I do some other nerdy things, but like I've been running Stellagama while I'm being bombed by jihadis, right?
Yeah. No, it's wild. And like, and to dovetail on that, like the follow through the last 3 years, I mean, I'm not going to name any names, but there are certain companies that we don't deal with anymore. There are certain companies I don't buy from anymore. There are certain people.
Worse, obviously, after the
Oh yeah, no, well, like the the masks were off. So I don't want to get too into that, but literally, like I was thinking about it, like because otherwise,
if you don't want to get to that, I'm not gonna bring it up, right? But if you want to get to that, I have no problem with it either, because as you know, I'm a very
but what
scientist.
I wanted, I was thinking about this question. I'm like, shit, no one's been bad to us. No one's been like, no, those guys in Stellagama, blah, blah, blah. No one, like nobody, like all the other companies.
Any problem with because one of the weird things is like, okay, you guys do the Cepheus engine. There's also Official Traveler. There's like more. I don't know if there's still more than one Official Traveler. I think there is, or there was at least at one point, right? And then there's some other guys that do like Pseudo Traveler. And are you guys all at war with each other, or do you get along?
No, that's the thing, right? Like everybody gets along. I mean, even there was we can talk about it later when we talk about like Traveler and the OSR and Cepheus and the OSR, right? But like Mongoose doesn't really bother us. The other Cepheus publishers like Zoser and Independence Games, they're great guys. Like everyone is super supportive. We all talk about like the stuff that we all and I'll be quite blunt, like we all steal each other's best ideas because that's what you do, right? And
if you've got an old school revival movement, that's what everybody in that movement should do, right? You should all be riffing on each other's ideas, right? Because that's how you end up generating like new and interesting stuff.
There really hasn't been anyone in the industry per se that's like gunning for us and been bad to us. So yeah, I had to think about it, and then I went, well, it's been rough, and it's been rough for Omer especially. And yeah, so I was like, I know who's been bad to us, terrorists. Which we'll leave it there. I think it definitely it slowed down production and publishing.
You know what?
I think
this is like opened my eyes. This is the first time I should have thought of this before, but I didn't for some reason, right? Driving in Dragons, I don't know if you're here, but your days are numbered. I just need to find some Israeli game designers, that's gonna be the end of it. Because all of them probably also served, and everything else, So that is the greatest single threat to Driving in Dragons right now.
Well, that's yeah.
All right. So,
I'll answer that question later. Yeah.
We got this design-wise. What was the greatest challenge you faced on that part? Did you enjoy I think that's a little bit broad right now, Billy. But feel free to ask it again in a little bit, because first I would like for Josh to give his own explanation, if he can, of what exactly Stellagama does. Right? What is the Cepheus engine, and just what is this kind of alternative timeline revival of old school Traveler in the same sense as what we do with old school D&D? What's the deal with it? So if you would care to give a relatively broad introduction to both who you are and what your company does, and the bigger context of how that is happening. For anybody here who doesn't know you, right? Because I'm sure a lot of people here have picked up the alternate Traveler stuff too, but there's probably a few who don't do sci-fi or don't know that it exists, so go for it.
All right. Well, okay, so about myself, I've been playing, I started with D&D Redbox in 1986 when I was 9 years old. Picked it up off my dad had bought a copy or two, and they had put it on a shelf, and it said 10 and up, and I decided to rebel by a year, and that was it. I've been gaming since the mid 80s, and I have a master's in history. I have a BA in history and math.
What university for history?
So the undergrad is UVic. So I lived on the West Coast for like 13 years of Canada. Nice. So I did high school and university there. And then my master's is in military history from the University of New Brunswick in in charming Fredericton, New Brunswick.
Oh, you went like straight across.
Oh yeah. No, and I'm originally from Montreal, where I reside now. I've been here 23 years, and I've been back here 23 years. And
my history degrees are both U of A. So back
right.
when the U of A was good. I mean, think about it this way: within that same span of time, there's a what would be a 10-year, no, less than 10 years, 7-year span of time where we all overlap at some point or another. There was like Jordan Peterson, Ezra Levant, and myself, right? So the U of A has a lot to answer for in terms of Canada.
Interesting. Yeah, I Jordan Peterson is like, wow, this guy is so Canadian. He's so Albertan. It's so, and if you don't know, it's hard to describe it. But if you know, it's like, wow.
He's a specifically Albertan intellectual figure, right? Because only an Albertan, like Peterson, like myself, like Ezra Levant, can have this kind of, none of the three of us are like the image of a rugged cowboy or a macho man, right? But we're the macho man equivalent of an intellectual, right? Because we have all of the training, but we don't fall into the horrific leftist trap, right? And so we end up becoming the counter movement in academia,
Levant's been doing yeoman's work in journalism for 30 years. He's been, anyway. Okay. So, so my, right. So my first actual RPG gig was I wrote, when I was living out west, I wrote in Victoria, I wrote there was I was a big fan of Heavy Gear, which was based, Greenpod 9 published Heavy Gear out of Montreal.
That was a great game. Yeah.
Great game. And so I was part of an amateur press association. I'd been writing since about 98, 99 with them. And it was really, really chill. And then they said, hey, do you guys want to collaborate on a source book for Dreampod 9? And so I got to write 8 pages or 10 pages of the space compendium or whatever it was, a spaceship compendium for Heavy Gear. And it was the best $100 I ever made, and the easiest $100 I ever made at the time, right? I was like, this is amazing. And then I didn't do any writing at all. Life picked up, and I moved across the country a couple of times, and then I started writing. I was always running games, and then often religiously every week. I ran 10 years of Heavy Gear, and it's now 11 years of Stars Without Number in Montreal.
Yes, $5 dues from New Zealand. And he says, great fan of Cephas in all its forms. Have all of them, played most of them. Greetings from New Zealand. And thank you very much, Brian. I'm sure you don't talk like that, but that's my best chance, my best shot at a New Zealand accent. We're really grateful for however much those $5. I have no idea if it's probably below the American dollar, but who knows, nowadays. But we're really grateful. That is going to go straight into the Domino Cat Fund, where we keep her in kibbles, and she's getting to be a bigger girl, I thought she was done growing, but she's become bigger than I thought. So she's got to be close to that now, though. But she eats a lot. So thank you again. Thanks to everyone who does super chats. Like I said before, slightly earlier in the show, that it's you don't have to do a super chat to get your post read. But obviously, if you do a super chat, your post will be read, unless it would demonetize me or something. All right. So thank you very much, Josh. Back to you. So you're talking about Stellagama now.
Yeah, so Stellagama, I think my understanding of the origin of Stellagama is that Omer and Richard collaborated writing Outer Veil for Spica Press, which I don't know if they're around anymore, for the first Mongoose license, and then I got involved in 2016. I think that's when Stellagama sort of decided to become Stellagama per se, rather than just Robert and Omer. So we're an international company. We've got people in the United States, in Israel, Canada, in England, in Spain. We publish basically, anything we like, really. That's the nice thing about Stellagama, is that we'll publish pretty much anything we like. We have...
But it's all kind of traveler themed, right?
Like, no. We've published OSR D&D stuff, like, repeatedly.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We have a whole bunch of...
I didn't know that.
Yeah. We have a whole bunch of stuff. Mainly for, I suppose, OSE, for like their OSE adjacent sort of stuff, or even just basic fantasy role play. I know that one of the authors really likes that. And yeah, we've published. It's 10 years now for Stellagama. I think the big moment was when Omer and Richard released. Was it Richard? The two of them. They released something called Near Space, which was a full traveler-size sector map of all the space around Earth, all the star systems around Earth, including like using the most modern scientific measurements and mapping that they've got, and of course flattened it to a two-dimensional X map, as one does in Traveler. But that was actually released for free on drive-through, and it made a huge impression because no one had really done that, and all the maps really were out of date, right? And so this was, there was a huge amount of information there, and it was all even even exoplanets, right? So like if we knew there was a planet, if they knew there was a planet in one of the star systems, not only was the star mapped, but also the main world, so that there'd be something to go to. There were, I think, a handful of sci-fi editions. I think there was one to bridge from or if you're a Traveler fan, you know what I'm talking about, to go from Jump One bridge from Earth, from Sol to Alpha Centauri. But otherwise, I think it's pretty much a completely, like, as far as they can do, like a legitimate, like a really legitimate attempt at a two-dimensional version of modern 3D space. It's really quite something. We basically publish. We publish for Stars Without Number, first and second edition. We've published for Basic Fantasy Roleplay. We've published OSR games. We've published like D&D OSR games in English or in Hebrew and Italian, and I think Spanish, but certainly Italian. We published a lot for CPS Engine and for Traveler adjacent material. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just going to put here in the chat for anyone who is not yet familiar, the drive-through site for Stellagama, because some people might want to familiarize themselves with some of these products as they go along. Who knows? So there it is. I've just posted it, and I was going to say something too. I guess I should have been paying a bit more attention. I had no idea you guys did so much other publishing outside of the kind of the CFIS end.
I mean, we all know D&D. Everyone loves it. It's great, and we like the more simpler, old school stuff, I guess.
So you weren't around though when they first released the Cepheus engine. You came after that, right?
No, I was there when they released Cepheus engine. I had just joined, and it was funny because so we can talk about, like, you want to talk about how that sort of happened and what Cepheus engine is, or
yeah.
So
okay. That's why I was wanted to be sure if you had actually been there or not. But
no, it happened. It happened around like 2015, 2016. What happened was that Mongoose got the Traveler license in 2008, and they released a really excellent version of Traveler, and it's one that I think a lot of people agree that it's like it really captures that original 1977 or 1981, depending on which version you got, game, and it's a great game. And what they did was they released the rules, an SRD, a system reference document, in 2008 under the OGL, the original OGL that had its problems earlier, and it went bananas. There was a moment where you could find practically everything for Mongoose, the Traveler, the Mongoose first edition rules back on drive-through. There was so many people publishing stuff, including Omer and Robert and Richard and myself. Robert came later. What happened was, though, is that in around 2016, it may be 15 or 16, Mongoose announced they were going to do a second edition of Traveler, and they weren't. At first they were talking about they were going to have the rules OGL, but in the end they didn't, and they made the Traveler Aid Society, which is a fan publishing scenario, like a fan publishing setup.
I see. So that's why they didn't want to keep doing it with an OGL.
Right.
I always think that's a bad idea, actually.
Yeah.
When a big company does
absolutely.
They just create a walled garden then.
Yeah. And the second edition Traveler rules are good. I personally, as a designer, there were a couple of things that I'm like, I see that's a mistake. Like there's certain things that I was like, but they're good. The art is beautiful. But it's a completely different approach, and they're doing what they're doing, and it's great. And basically, someone said, well, forget this. I'm going to make a OGL compatible version of the Mongoose rules that are completely open, and that was Jason Kemp, and he wrote the Cepheus engine, and those rules are very much a old school toolkit. They are still really the Mongoose first edition rules. They have certain things that Cepheus does that harken back all the way to like 1977. It's wild. Some of the things are like really old school, and some of it's very, very modern, and that's it. And that's a toolkit that came out in, I think, 2016 or 2017. And what we did is so I think what we did was we looked at a Cepheus engine, and we said, well, we're going to publish our own thing. And I've always wanted to run like a longer Traveler campaign, and I was setting one up, and I was on a forum somewhere, or I don't remember where this was, and I was having a hard time going through the Cepheus rules and figuring out what to do. And then someone, I read it somewhere, he said, the thing about Traveler is it always feels like the Traveler's always fighting the GM at every step of the way. And I think that's probably a little unfair, but there's definitely something to that. And I said to Omer, I said, I don't want to run my games with Cepheus engine as it's written. Let's make our own version. And so we came up with Cepheus Light, he and I. Mm-hmm. And so what Cepheus Light was specific design choices that took Cepheus engine, and you keep all the basic mechanics for sure, but you say, okay, this works this way. So we basically made specific choices for the game, so that it's easy to run for the GM. it's easy to make player characters, and it's easy. That's I think that that's probably a fair critique of Mongoose second edition, is that it's a little too fantasy, and some of the weapons in the original book look ridiculous. Absolutely, yeah. But the thing about Cepheus Light was that it was very basic. We had we decided we'd make like a little closed box of like, here is a rule set to work on, and it was very well received. A lot of people said it's the best version of Traveller they've seen since 1977. Which, I mean, if you're
high praise, very high praise, yeah.
Right. So, like I said, the fans are always good to us, and so we took that and we ran with it, we decided, okay, let's. One of the things, for example, that people, what we found was that I don't remember if it was in Cepheus Deluxe or Light. Well, anyway, we decided to expand the rules. We made Cepheus Deluxe, which is mostly the same with a few changes to make it a little, slightly larger rule set, a couple of more options. A lot of stuff in terms of ship design was kept very simple in Cepheus Light, and I think we opened that up in Cepheus Deluxe. A lot of the world building options also opened up in Cepheus Deluxe. And one of the big things that we did change was we added, I think that the default in Cepheus Deluxe is non-random character generation. And this was, this made waves. I always find it funny because, right?
Controversial, yeah.
It's if you're a Traveller player, and wow, I mean, there have been,
especially if you're an old school Traveller player, you are running a game where you could die in character creation, right? And so to go from there to say, no, right? It's not random anymore, that is a bigger jump than it would have been for D&D,
No, for sure. And the reason we did that was, first of all, well, the main reason we did is that enough people were asking. Enough people were saying, I love this game. I love everything about Traveller, except for the fact that I want to play the character I want to play, and I want to go. I want to play the pilot. If I'm in the space, if I'm in the Navy and I don't become a pilot, I want it to be a pilot. Why am I what am I doing? And fine, right? So we wrote the default in Cepheus Deluxe is non-random. There are some elements of randomness. You can, there are event tables that happen. That's an innovation from Mongoose for sure, from the first edition rules, and those are random. And so they're optional, but you can add them in very easily, and they're random. And so you can still end up in prison, and you can still end up getting hurt or things like that, weird things happening, and that's good fun. But the baseline is you make your character. By the end of the character creation, more or less, if you're like, I need to be the Space Marine, then you're going to make a Space Marine, and that's it.
That question of character creation is a really significant part of RPG design, because you've just kind of encapsulated the two sides of it, right? I want to make the character I'm envisioning versus I want to make a character and then figure out how to make it my own, right? And those are two very, very different perspectives. And Traveller has always been, even more than D&D, the latter of those two, So to then go and have you have more agency, anyways. Now, my own games, I love. If you've got any of my RPGs, you can see that I like random character generation. You roll randomly for social class. You roll randomly for, you roll randomly when you level up. You have an option to choose instead of rolling. But the whole idea is to see, how do you incorporate that into the story in a way that it means it's not just your idea, but it's your idea interacting with an X factor, right? That's a bold move.
That was something
I was going to ask you before I forget. Yeah. So you have been a gamer since the 80s, right?
Yeah.
And when did you first play Traveller? Was it way back in the 80s or was it later on?
I never ran Traveller back in the never. I was 9 in 1986. I did not have the literacy skills to handle Traveller. Like it's a very technical game. Like there's a lot of stuff that the math isn't heavy really, but there's a lot going on there. I remember I think I played Traveller in the 90s at some point. It was probably Mega Traveller, or it was Traveller the New Era, which is the Traveller about which we will never speak, right? I actually came to Traveller from Twilight 2000. I really liked Twilight 2000, and I was like, oh, they're using this system for Twilight 2000. And a buddy of mine was like, I'm going to run it. Okay, perfect. And yeah, so I played in Traveller the New Era, and that was cool, except that it's not great. It's okay.
It is very different from Traveller, right? Like
I really, really like post-apocalyptic. In fact, it's one of my favorite.
And you're gonna have to check out Sons of Heaven, because Sons of Heaven probably owes at least some kind of debt in my memory to to Hard Times and the New Era, because it is basically that concept, right? That you are playing in the human confederation of space has collapsed, and now but the reason I did that wasn't really an homage to the New Era, which I agree was not very well done, right? And it clashed with the fandom, which is horrible thing to do. But rather it is because I in my game is going to be an OSR game, and I wanted to have that element that you're traveling the wilderness, except it's space, right? Instead of in a fantasy planet, you're traveling to these different places and going into these ruins. So there's dungeons, there's monsters, which are many of the other races that have now come in and been predatorily pursuing humanity, right, and all of that sort of thing.
Well, the thing that's why I like, one of the reasons I like Stars Without Numbers so much. The same thing. There's an implied post-apocalyptic.
I will give a lot of credit to Stars Without Number for I haven't copied a lot of stuff from Stars Without Number, but I've certainly looked at what they did, and that inspired me to do a different version of kind of similar things, right? Because Stars Without Number is the GOAT of OSR science fiction, right?
Yeah, and his approach has influenced our GM tools and things like that, especially, right? Like it's a no-brainer, right? He's got the right idea. The thing about post-apoc that I love the most, more than the what you're saying, is the fact that it's very easy for the players to make a difference. That's because the setting isn't set in stone. There's no massive empires. Like, it's always cool to do a Star Wars, right? But it's cooler when everything is, the Indian Ocean in the late medieval Renaissance sort of thing, like where anything goes, and the Portuguese show up, and it's just a mess, right? Like when everything is practically lawless, and you have to survive in that, and make something much more interesting, and it's much easier for 3 to 5 half crazed bootleggers to do something in space, right? It's much more interesting. And so I've had great success with that, and it's something that informs a lot of our design choices, right? The
post-apocalypse allows you to have a kind of a freedom of the potential things you can do, right? You can do a post-apocalyptic game where you're doing just one thing, on killing zombies or something, right? But one of the features of it is that if when everything's falling apart, there are many different options, right? So in Sons of Heaven, for example, you can just be a space pirate or something like that. You can be an adventure seeker or a treasure hunter that goes to these almost dead worlds to steal now extremely valuable pre-collapse technology or things like that. You can be an explorer that's looking for some of these there are legends of lost fleets that are hidden somewhere in space. You can try to go find them. You can try to be part of a movement that's trying to rebuild a new kind of political polity in the human zone, right?
It's
it
wide
allows
open.
the DM to decide, or the players to decide what they're going to do, right?
It's wide open, and it makes it for like it makes for really like a lot of, and that was the thing about Travel the New Era that I really liked, and I still really like about it. But yeah, it clashed with the fandom, and it sort of, it was the 90s, right? So everyone was into meta plots, right? Everyone was into like the publisher
Right.
putting out these splat books about what's going to happen,
It's all
and
vampires' goddamn fault,
right, but Game Designers Workshop did that with Traveler,
Yeah,
and it
terrible.
it they shot themselves in the foot, and they did it at the time when collectible card games are coming out, and that was the end of it. And it's too bad. It's I really lament the loss of GDW. Of all the games that we've lost, of all the companies, I'm like, oh man, those guys are gone, right? Yeah. So Cepheus. So the thing about the random character generation, right, is that well, here's the thing, right? Like for me, my biggest thing about Cepheus Deluxe and as a designer is that it's got the 2d6 plus attribute plus skill, and that's totally par for the course, right? But in Cepheus Light, we did 2d6 plus skill only, or 2d6 plus attribute, depending on what you were doing. And for me, I think like it's so funny that everyone's like, we don't know why you did that, and I will tell you now why I did that. If you're watching and you're wondering, I feel like I have to plant my flag here. Is that if you want to play, like if you want to, let me put it this way, if you want to make a game where anyone can do pretty much anything, the everyman can be something with the right skill, or every person, right, can be something with the right skill and the right training and the right amount of luck, even if they're ugly, or even if they're average, or even if they're clumsy, right, then no attribute bonus, just skill, right? And people were like, no, but that's not how you do it. And I'm like, well, that's how you did it. That's how it happened back in the day, but it doesn't anymore because the attribute plus skill people, the sort of weird realism of that, which is, fine, right? Except, it's anyway, that's my little diatribe, right? The thing about the random character generation was that we really are trying to broaden the appeal as much as possible. And the first thing we did, by the way, after we released Cepheus Deluxe, was write a full random character generator rules for Cepheus Deluxe, in case, because people were like, we love this, can we do random?
When the DM can
Right?
choose.
No, for sure. And that's absolutely, like, people are like, yeah, no, this is how to do it, and that was it. Okay, but we really wanted, like, out of the box. No, we don't want, like, I've joined games. I remember I joined a text game, a Discord text game. I think only the DM, the GM, knew who I was, right? And yeah, he said, yeah, well, we're going to use the non-random character generator because we want to just have, like, player character roles. We want to have, like, some sort of class, some sort of control over what's going to happen. And I'm yeah, like, that's totally normal. That's what everyone expects, right? And in D&D, that's your class, right? It's like you don't get to be, you roll at random attributes, but at least what your role is in the party, more or less.
Yeah,
and the problem with Traveler is because out of the box, there's no niche protection. There's just a whole bunch of skills that you pick up. It can be a problem.
In a way, the life path course in Traveler, right? Like if you end up you end up joining the Navy, or you end up becoming a Marine or whatever, or you end up becoming a merchant, right? Like, I mean, that is that is the substitute for having character class, right?
To some extent, but remember that all
you
the
can have
skills,
multiple jobs, sure, over there.
but all the skills are randomly acquired,
Yeah,
right?
that's
So
true.
you can end up being you end up finishing character generation, and you've got a ship, but you don't have the pilot skill.
That's true.
Right. And that's really part of the thing we wanted to address, right? Was like, if you're going to be the scout, you get a scout ship, you better know how to pilot the ship. If you know that those basic sort of things, so that a party can cohere and come together and coalesce, and basic, very low level niche protection, right, is basically what I think it was going on. And so those sorts of things happened in Cepheus Deluxe. And at the same time, we put out Escape from Miklagard, which is a little OSE homage to Escape from New York, but set in a fantasy version of Constantinople as oh yeah, it's great. It's great fun. And I've used the rules for when does the apocalypse actually happen as you're adventuring, and that the city is being sacked, but when does the hammer come down? Those rules are great rules to use. I've used them. I adapted them for a cyberpunk adventure on a planet, and that was fun. There's all sorts of we've published a lot of stuff. I'm totally omitting a ton of things, of course, and then one of the rule sets that I published was piracy and privateering, which is it's a full set of space encounter rules as well as rules for piracy and privateering, right? And what I did with it was funny, because this kind of comes out of Traveller. I was like, what kind of campaign can I run? My players want to be pirates, or privateers at least, or whatever. And I went to Pirates of Drynax, which is this big, and it's an excellent campaign for Mongoose Traveller. But the rules were fighting me, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing this. So instead of fighting the rules, I wrote my own, and that was it's made a splash. I'm always proud of piracy and privateering, and it's sold quite well. So there's space encounter rules. They're just, what I did was figured out and it's from it came from Twilight 2000. I said, okay, so what are there's sort of specific ways to think about encounters, and I couldn't do the way it's done in D&D, where you have sort of terrain and monsters and things like that. So I thought in terms of systems, and I said, okay, so the two things about space systems that we need are the amount of traffic in the system, how important it is, and the amount of security in the system, how patrolled it is, right? And once I each of those had three, sort of like a low, medium, and high setting for each, which means 9 different system types. And then I realized that 2 or 3 of the system types get collapsed. So there's really, I think, is 8 or 7 system types. And so you have things like, a capital system, right, which is high traffic. And that's very highly patrolled. It's very secure and high traffic. And then you have the high traffic but medium amount of security, which is I think I called it not a going concern, but something like that. And then the last one was, of course, a hive of scum and villainy, which is low security but a lot of traffic. And so once I had those, it was easy to generate the encounter tables. Not just first you have to have, is there an encounter in each of those systems in different places in those systems? So like around the main world, in the asteroid fields and things like that. I really had fun with it. And then once you have an encounter, what kind of encounter you have, that becomes the issue too. And so there's, if you're in a very patrolled, secure system, you're not going to see any pirates, or you're going to very rarely see pirates, but you're going to see a lot of patrols, right? And A lot of merchant
$10
shipping.
super chat here from Sadwings Raging. Thank you very much, Sadwings. No comment, but a couple of emojis there. Apparently, I guess he's saying that he thinks that what you're talking about is very cool. I expect so. Thank you very much for that, Sadwings.
So that kind of encounter system is it's tough to swing. Like I've been doing it. We built some of those encounters rules into Nomad FTL. I'll get to that in a bit. We have our own science fiction setting called Terra Arisen, which is it's sort of post-war swashbuckling pulp. Not super pulpy, not super, but like what it is the Earth was invaded by reticulans, by the little green men, little gray aliens. That's it.
Oh, that's really funny because I have not read that book. I swear, this is the first I hear of it, right? But the fundamental background premise of Sons of Heaven starts that the humanity, sometime in the 21st century or so, gets invaded by the little gray aliens who enslave most of the human race, and then they spend thousands of years as slaves of the grays before they get free again.
Okay, so in this one, it's about 150 years of exploitation and colonization, and then there's a 20-year war of like a 20-year revolt that ends up where the Earth, the Terrans, have taken over a huge chunk of territory. They have allies in the CSEC who are is it gecko, a gamad. Omer likes lizards. They live a lot. There are a lot of lizards in his neck of the woods, and so he likes lizards. But there's other aliens as well.
Because one of the main villains in the present day of Sons of Heaven are the Sorai, who are large size, like giant sized reptile humanoids, right? And they're basically the substitute for the I guess you could say for the Philistines, So,
right. So no, the CSEC in this game are sort of Klingon adjacent, and there are allies, and the Reticulans are still there, and so the setting is very much just after the war, like 5 years after the war. Everything sort of calmed down a bit, and now there's reconstruction, but there's still saber rattling, and it's sort of post, it's post-war shenanigans, and there's always historical analogies that we make. I think it's is it post World War II? I don't know, maybe post World War One more. I don't know. It depends on, but it's all pretty more or less the same sort of thing, right? Where you have this border between 2 or 3 star empires that causes that there's all sorts of problems, and there's a lot of stuff like with collaborators. Like, are you hunting down collaborators that were working for the Reticulans? Are there war criminals, or are you a privateer, or basically a pirate who doesn't think the war should have ended, and so you decide to fight your own private war against the Reticulans? And or do you want to settle other parts of space because now there's a whole other sector that hasn't really been explored by the Terrans, and so you can go in that direction instead. So it's an interesting little setting, and I'm trying to think. Oh, we also have one of our best sellers is Sword of Cepheus. We've had a first, and now we've had a second edition, and that is Cepheus, but taken fantasy. I should say more swords and sorcery rather than traditional high fantasy. Mm-hmm. And that has done very well for us. I'm currently I've submitted one manuscript for something, and so now I'm going to be working on a setting for Swords of Cepheus second edition, and that one same thing. It's based on Cepheus Deluxe, and it has non-random character generation, but with some random elements. And we did a second edition a couple of years ago to really revamp things. All the one of the big critiques we got for the first edition was there's a lot of D&Dism in it. There's a lot of the monsters and the spells, especially, were very D&D, and so we decided, no, we're not going to do this. The monsters are revamped a lot, and the spells are much more mutation, catastrophic. If you fail a spell roll, like a lot of the spells are now rituals, and they become a lot more powerful. And if things go wrong, oh boy, do they go wrong, right? And you get all sorts of horrible mutation or corruption. That's what we called it, right? And yeah, it's an interesting. It's a fun setting. It's a fun system. We haven't supported it as much as I think we should have so far. So I was over the past few months, I was sort of putting my thoughts together about a something vaguely Bronze Age, Phoenician sort of feel about settling a continent, a heretofore undiscovered continent that's really already been discovered. There's natives, but they're not there, and of course I won't go too deep, but because there's not much there yet. But it's basically colonizing Quebec, because you got to write with what you know, and I'm going to have a little fun with it, because there'll be little moments, if you know about like the way that we talk about settling Quebec here. I'm going to have a little fun with it, but I'm the phrase, the quote I keep in my head when I think about this setting and what I want to do with it is Jacques Cartier's log entry, right? When he says, "I have found the land that God gave to Cain." And when I teach the settling of Quebec, when I teach it in a history class, I always start with that. I'm like, you guys know your Bible? Because this is what the Europeans thought of Quebec, right? The mosquitoes are too big and the snow is too heavy, right? And so yeah, it's we'll see how it goes. We have also a publishing queue. We have so I've just submitted a 10 science fiction adventure anthology. Most of them are adventures I've run over the past few years that I've been a little more meticulous in writing up my adventures, and so I wanted to adapt them for publication, which I will confess is a tedious process that I do not recommend to anyone. But that's the manuscript is complete, and so that's Omer's editing that, and he's doing layout for a new layout for Cepheus Deluxe. We did a Kickstarter a few years ago for Cepheus Deluxe Enhanced Edition, full color, beautiful art, very pleased with it, but there were some problems in layout that needed to be addressed, and we are finally getting around to addressing them. Thank you very much, Hamas. Last year we published something called Retro Rockets, which is we have one of our newer members is a guy named Rob Garita, who is doing he does a lot of space pulp, a lot of like Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon stuff. So everything is planetary sci-fi, and so it's a lot of rocket ships and ray guns, and that's a lot of fun to it's a lot of fun to play in, and that's using I think so. Retro Rockets uses the Nomad FTL rules. I'll talk about those in a sec. And so I'm actually going to be editing that this week. Is his new supplement on the planet Saturn, because when he published it, he published everything from Mercury all the way out to Jupiter, and so it was time to add a Saturn supplement, and that's fun. And Richard has a world building guide that he wants to publish, so that's also going to be something to edit, and that's a full. It's a very, I think, a little more harder science fiction than I haven't really looked at it yet, but I will be. So yeah, we've got a lot of stuff in the queue, and at some point we have to support. Absolutely have to support Sword of Cepheus more, because I think the fans would like it, and it's done well, and I think that means we need to support it. But it's a little weird because the 3-4 of us do a lot of science fiction in our gaming and not a lot of fantasy. Though I've run a bit of fantasy the last few years, so that's been okay.
Yeah, it is a tricky thing in the business, so to say, that
yeah.
For whatever, I mean, I guess probably because D&D was first and what have you, right? That there's, the two biggest genres are fantasy and science fiction, but science fiction has a much much smaller fandom than people who.
It's an order of magnitude or two smaller than fantasy. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, there's a lot of good science fiction games out there, and there's a market for it too. But I mean, if we switched exclusively to fantasy, like, no one would notice, right? Like, it doesn't have the same cachet in terms of market share, and that's that is what it is, But no, like I said, we do some. We have a few other games out there, and a few other, like, we have the quantum system, which is like, people were challenging Omer, like, Cepheus Light's cool. Can you get it even lighter? And I think he even got it down to like 2 pages at one point. But the quantum system he's used for a game called Barbaric, which is a swords and sorcery game, and that has a second edition as well, and a few other games. I remember we published something called it came from the Scriptorium. We published 2 versions of that, an OSE compatible and a Barbaric compatible game, and it's a bit of a grindhouse Italian fantasy horror sort of craziness. You can have your arm chopped off and then get a chainsaw, like, it's like that sort of thing, right? Wear a chainsaw for an arm. So that's those sorts of, we do a lot of stuff like that because, again, like, people have Italian spider people have submitted stuff and it gets published. Let's see, there's so that's we're working on things like that. We have another science fiction setting. What we're going to do is take Terra Arisen about 600 years in the future, post-apocalyptic. We're trying to avoid what happened with the Travel to the New Era. We don't like the metaplot stuff, so we're not doing that. Like, but it's just like, let's see what happens. See what happens if we really push it into the future and come up with a setting that way. Let's see. Yeah. So the other thing I should mention is we have another game system called Faster Than Light Nomad, FTL Nomad. That came out because of the OGL crisis. And we Mongoose was slow to slower than we would have liked anyway to allay our fears. Nothing's happened, right? Like, you can still publish.
I mean, that whole thing, it created a whole bunch of games, a lot of which were done very hastily. I'm not saying that about yours. I don't know how it is. But it's something that ended up being a tremendous nothing burger, right? Like, and I kind of predicted that.
Well, we didn't want to have to deal with the with any of that controversy.
Yeah, sure.
And so in the end, we came up with this system. It's very, no big surprise. It's a 2d6 plus a tribute sort of game, right? It's fine, right? No problem. But we decided we would change a lot of things. So character generation is stupid fast. There's no randomness per se. Someone already mentioned something about random character generation, and I'm percolating it in the back of my head, but like I think I know how to do that, you know. But the two things, well, the way space travel works and the way starship construction works is very different than traditional Traveler, which is definitely something that raised some eyebrows. But hey, you know, we wanted to try something different completely, and we changed the way the mechanics work. So instead of having, you know, 2d6 plus a whole bunch of mods try and beat a target number, we said, let's keep the target number at 8. We're going to roll 2d6, try and beat an 8. You only add your attribute or your skill, whatever it is. So there's only one thing that you add. And then the other mods are all extra dice. So you, for example, and it's just an advantage and disadvantage mechanic. So, and you can stack up advantages and stack up disadvantages. They cancel each other out 1-to-1. So if you've got +3 dice and -1 die, then you're at +2 dice. You roll 4d6 and take the best 2, right? Very simple game, and it raised a few eyebrows, but people seem to enjoy it because it moves pretty quick, it's fun because it turns out that people like throwing a lot of dice. So you know. So that was something that I brought. It was the sort of thing where we're coming up with our ideas, and a lot of the mechanical ideas are more or less the same old. And I said, you know, why don't we try this instead? I've run the numbers. I don't know if you know what anydice.com is, but it's a website where you can not just throw dice, but you can generate like the probability distributions, and it's pretty relatively straightforward to use. In my math degree, I hate probability. I think it's the tool of the devil. It's it literally was the hardest thing. Like, it was harder than all the analysis. It was harder than the abstract algebra. Probability theory is like, no. So to have a website generate, like, okay, if you have 3 dice, keep the best 2. Here's what the probability is. Here's what the percentage is, and the average and the standard deviation. I'm like, oh, thank God, right? Once I had all that, I could show it to the other guys and say, this is, I think, it's just fun. It's just a different way of doing things, and we've gotten some good response for it. So that's good. But we published that 24. 25. I don't remember. One second. I've got the book right here. 2025. Okay, 2024 and 2025. Okay, so it you know, we've got retro rockets as the one of the settings for it, and I think I'll probably put out the adventure anthologies written up for Nomad, but it's easy enough to switch it to Cepheus Deluxe, or even to an OSR, like a D&D OSR game. It's really like the mechanics are almost, you know, it's easy to tell where you have to make changes. I think in terms of Stellagama, that's what we've been working on. It's let's see. We had a question here. Anyone? Okay, we can.
Oh yes. So there's the Necromancer. He says, anyone use the Stars Without Number faction charts? I'm trying to adapt that to my 1700 setting game. It's difficult, but holds great promise, I think.
So we have a factions game system in Barbaric and in Nomad. I don't remember if we put one in Swords of Cepheus second edition. I think so, but if not, they're more. It would be this more or less the same if we did. And I run Stars with a Number. Like I said, I've been running it for 11 years, mostly the same group. And we don't use the faction system. I find it's too much. What I do use, though, I've been using it now, is the faction rules from Nomad. because they're very simple. Because the thing about faction rules and domain play is really you can go in two directions. I think the first is you can go adventure conqueror king direction, which is like a simulator for civilization, right? It's intense. It's cool, but it's intense. I don't have that kind of bandwidth. And the reason is because for me, faction games are adventure generators for campaigns, for campaign play. So even if I have high level characters running a faction and the players tell me what they want their faction to do, the outcome is adventures for the lower level characters or for the high level characters if they need to, but it's all they're designed to generate campaigns and adventures in those campaigns. They're not there to simulate reality in any way. And I think it's actually a weakness of the Stars Without Number rules. Is I think the faction, it's cool. I look at it, and every time I look at it, I'm like, I can't do this. I just always bounce off of it. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but it's there's a lot there. There's a lot there for those faction rules.
I've never gotten too much to like this kind of faction mechanics sort of deal, right? Like in my games, obviously there are a lot of factions, but I deal with them looking at the context of the developing timeline of the campaign, and
right.
play it kind of by ear, which I get that there's some people that probably would benefit from having a system that lets you, whether it's not random, I guess, but like where you have reactions that entire factions might take based on certain things happening in the campaign. But I haven't seen a system that really does that extremely well.
Yeah, the ones we have in Nomad are simple, right? And when Omer and I talked about them, I said, look, we can't go crazy. First of all, we have a page count to worry about. We don't want to go too like Nomad in like 8.5 by 11 is like 220 pages, right? Which is not large, but it's not small, and we don't want to add a full faction. The faction rules are pretty small, and again, right? The idea is they're there to generate adventures. They're there to give the GM ideas for running adventures. You don't need like for me when I come up with my campaign ideas and I have factions in them as well, I say, okay, what would happen if the players don't get involved? Who wins? Who loses? What's the result of this faction's meddling and whatever? And then I say, okay, well, if the players don't get involved, this is going to happen. So if the players want to get involved, then things will change. And if they don't get involved, then this is probably what's going to happen. And that's it. There's no, keeping the factions in mind is important, but not actually gaming them out. So I in a larger sense. But no, I'm using the very basic Nomad mechanics for factions in my game, and it seems to work so far. They're on their second or third faction term for this. This is the newest campaign. This is the third campaign for this group since 2018 when I started running for them, and it's gone pretty well. So they now have high level characters that they want to. They have a faction, and they're like, we got to do stuff. I'm like, all right, perfect. Crap, I got to figure out how to make this work, right? But yeah, it's the faction game is very. It's not for everyone, right? And yeah, I mean, if you're adapting Stars Without Numbers factions into like and all their like, because the factions have 3 attributes and then a whole bunch of like, I don't want to say like not holdings, but like abilities. Like you can buy agents, and you can buy ships, and you can buy like fleets and things like that. If you're adapting that to a 1700s game, like historical, like Age of Sail game, which is actually a pretty good. That's a pretty good analogy, because that's the feel of Traveller and Stars Without Number, right? Yeah, I mean, it could work. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. If you've got the it's always the thing with GM prep is that if you have the energy and you've got the time and it's fun, then do it. And if you don't have one of those three things, do something else because it will become very tedious.
I'm gonna jump in here with a little commercial break that I wanted to mention that as of last night, I guess, the latest issue of the Pundit Files has come back out on DTRPG. As you know, Pundit Files is a periodical that I was doing with the Red Room store until the Red Room store had to close. So I'm now reissuing them with help from the Lixuni Gaming publisher. And the newest reissue is the Pundit Files issue 16, which is called The Slavic World Tree. And it is, of course, directly a source book to Baptism of Fire, which is my historically authentic RPG set in Poland in the 11th century. And it is basically a guide to traveling through the plains of the world tree, but not the one that you guys all know from Thor and company, but rather the Slavic version of that, which is in some ways a lot weirder than the Norse one. And so it's got all of the locations on the world tree. It's got the different realms you can travel to, and if you're doing some, if you want the fantasy of it to get very weird, you can make use of it to travel these different worlds in the world tree. You know, the different realms of the spirits and the gods. It's a very interesting thing. You can easily adapt it to other settings, of course, and it's usable for the Baptism of Fire RPG or any other OSR game. If you don't find that interesting, be sure to check out the Lixuni Gaming web page on DriveThru anyways, because there's 15 other issues that have already come out, and there's quite a few more that have yet to come out. You can get any issue of the Pundit Files for just $4.50, because it used to be $3.50, but DriveThru has to get its cut, so there you go. And I hope that you check it out. Check out that one, and check out all the previous ones that we've already put out. And every 2 weeks we come out with a new reissuing. So until we run out. So be sure to check that out at the Lixuni Gaming site. I'm going to put the link in the chat here. Slavic World Tree is a great supplement, especially if you're trying to make your own world or something, and you want to make use of mythology, but you'd rather pick a mythology that's a little bit less known than say the Greco-Roman or the Norse. Check out how the Slavs saw the other world as being. Okay, and I guess that's it for my my deal there. So you've done a very good job of telling us all about the different products that you guys produce there at Stellagama. Do you play? I mean, you said you play Start Without Number. You're mostly a sci-fi guy, I guess. Is that right?
I like sci-fi. I like military. I like modern. I run fantasy. Yeah, but I think I'm mostly a sci-fi guy. I have if I could, it'd be mecha all the time. Just heavy gear. Yeah. Have
you done a mecha game for Stellagama yet?
I wrote a mecha supplement for FTL Nomad, and I'm very proud of it. It's a short little book, but it's mine. It's my little homage to, I have like six or eight, I don't remember, different campaign ideas, and because the mecha creation rules are very, very basic and very generic. And then you do things like, so are you playing in a neo-feudal space, we'll call it mech warrior sort of game, or are you playing a heavy gear sort of thing, or is it power armor dropping from orbit to attack bugs? I think I named that mecha the ape. There's a whole bunch of different genres I try and point out to, and design some mecha around it so everyone sees like no, it works. But it, yeah, I mean, I right now, so I have every other week I run Start with a Number with one group, and then my other group on the alternating weeks, as we call it, the Gaming Lab, and we've run a whole bunch of different games. Everything from Modern Warfare by Zoser, which was cool. I played it. It was sort of like a Twilight 2000, but you start in Latvia and you're Canadian soldiers, because that's where the our NATO contingent is right now, is in Latvia. So if you're overrun by Russia and you become a partisan, what do you do? So we did 3 sessions of that. We ran Barbarians of Honor and Intrigue, which is based on the Barbarians of Lemuria system. So that's a swashbuckling game. That was okay. A little finicky for certain reasons. We've run Savage Worlds. I've run Savage Worlds. That's fun. I've run a lot of that, actually. I ran a pulp 1930s Savage Worlds game, and I ran a pulp 1920s low-level superheroes in New York Savage Worlds game. I run Shadow Dark. I have a little campaign going with 2 groups. That one of them is the Gaming Lab group. We do that for about 6 months at a shot. They really like it. I really like it. Very, very good. I've actually used it instead of Old School Essentials. Not that I think Old School Essentials is a great format for the old BX RPG. It's a great format. But the reason I switched to Shadow Dark was because, well, the other when I run Shadow Dark, when I run for my kids, I have 2 daughters, and they started with OSE, but then they like Shadow Dark more. And the reason is because, well, one of them's a cleric and one of them's a magic user, and they love being able to cast as many spells as they can until the luck runs out. So that's I think, if there was any innovation I would take for like fantasy and magic fantasy, would be that. Like that's the only thing.
That's what I've done in all of my OSR games, right? I don't use the fantasy and magic at all. Shadow Dark is very good in that it incorporates a lot of ideas that were developed in the 2nd and 3rd wave OSR. Like I've mentioned, how can people say, "Oh, you're anti-Shadow Dark"? I'm not anti-Shadow Dark. I mean, how can I be? They have every single mechanic that I have in my games in theirs, So
it's a fun game. Also, I will tell this little vignette story about my 2 daughters, ages 12 and 8. And in Shadow Dark, the clerics can use longswords, right? And so my 8-year-old has her cleric using a mace, and I'm like, well, why would you do that? The longsword does a D8 damage, but the mace only does a D6. She's like, yeah, but Daddy, mace rhymes with face, and that's her battle cry, mace to the face. And I'm like, okay, we're done. That's it. This kid's gonna go far, right? Oh yeah. So yeah, it's so all these games, like, it's been a lot of fun. I've also one of my players is the Shadow Dark and OSE. I think if there's anything all of us can take from, exactly, layout and editing are essential.
Well, I'm not sure if Destroso was meaning that as like a backhanded compliment, right? But in other words, that there's nothing new under the sun in either Shadow Dark or OSE.
No, and you know what? Look, I mean, like, I'll tell you about editing. Like, when I got on with Stellagama, I mean, my background's history. Like, I have a master's degree in history, and so I do a lot of writing. And I would get a manuscript from Omer or from Richard, and I would just tear it to shreds. I'm not a great proofreader. Like, I'll do it, but it's not my thing, right? But like in terms of content editing, I'll be like, look, guys, like I wrote this in this big email and to them a long time ago, and it's been sort of like the baseline for how we approach things, especially for setting material. Every sentence has to be a plot hook, character hook, adventure hook, something hook in the setting. If you have all this extraneous fluff, it's nice, it's great, but these aren't actual history texts. These aren't actual like travel guides, right? These are everything should be a full blown like a hook. That's the Platonic ideal, and I understand if like that doesn't happen, but you know, the you have to do that because we're not like we design our games, we write our games for them to be played and for the game master in mind. Like it has to be that way.
Well, I understand that completely. All of my historically authentic games are meant to be really playable, but it has been the opinion of people who've played them, I think that, or people who've bought them, that they are also history books, you know, like so, and more so the ones that have played in my campaigns, right? My players are always like, well, you know, we just finished playing this campaign, you know, Lion and Dragon and the War of the Roses, right? And it's like I know more about the War of the Roses now than I could have if I'd taken a university course, you know, like, yeah, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got Silk Road, and I really when you announced that, I was like, ooh, good, because like no one talks.
It's done really, really well. You know, it's very
no one talks about the Silk Road, right? And no one really like. It's a really good supplement. It's a really good setting.
And as
again,
one historian to another, right? Like it's. I had to do quite a lot of research on that because I was like looking at that timeline, right, from the Third Crusade until Genghis Khan, and I had to track out like everything I could get about every city in the, like, you know, the Holy Land and Syria were pretty easy, but once you're getting, you know, into the stands, right, it becomes super. There's a lot of stuff that I had to be a little bit speculative about because you know. After Genghis Khan went through it, there was like very little.
It's funny, actually. I'd gone to a seminar. It was some historical thing, and it was it's a Canadian journalist named Terry Glavin who gave a talk on bulk, which is on the Silk Road, but it doesn't. Right, and the thing about it was some weird connection that bulk had to the Nazis. When they ended up doing a massive, it had to do with their whole Aryanism nonsense, right?
Yeah, they had a whole expedition there. Yeah, actually, in the 1930s, one of the issues of the Pundit Files is for a supplement for my Invisible College RPG, which is normally it's a modern day setting, occult, not occult horror, I guess, but like you know, modern day occult setting, right? But I did this supplemented in Pundit Files that was the 1930s campaign of Invisible College. So it's the same concept, but it's like in the past, right? And in there I've got, you know, this. It's basically a timeline from throughout the whole 30s, including a whole bunch of stuff that was historically true, right? And I mentioned this about how like the Anwer, I guess it was they were. Doing these expeditions, right? That they went to like these places to try to prove the ancient Aryan people were you know, the super race or whatever. So Destroso confirms it was a backhanded compliment. He says, "Shadow Darkness RPG is what Green Day is to punk rock."
I mean,
I don't hate it at all. I just hate that it's not recognized for what it is.
Yeah, it's derivative. Guess what? Okay, like that's fine, you know.
Gonzalo Lira Bartab says the Silk Road started far before the Third Crusade. Yeah, of course. The Silk Road is a kind of spongy term, right? But it you know, you could apply it earliest with like pre-Alexandrian times, like before Alexander the Great, there was already a trade route going through there. But I couldn't do the entire history of the Silk Road, right? And since I used like a hook of the Third Crusade, right? Because I figured a lot of gamers would be interested in running a campaign set in the Third Crusade, right? It's the one with Richard the Lionheart and everything, right? And so from there, I said, well, that happens in the 1190s, right? The 1220s is when Genghis Khan wipes everybody out, right? And so that is a good block of like 30 years of potential campaign time that you can play, right?
Yeah. No, it's a great setting. I mean that the someone in the Cepheus community actually published a Holy Roman Empire setting in the 1520s, and I picked it up immediately because like no one does this stuff, right? And the other one that totally blew my mind was the Red Room's Belle Epoque.
Oh
setting.
Yeah, that's an excellent production there. Yeah.
No one does the Belle Epoque. They'll do Victorian era shenanigans, right? But the Belle Epoque, like Paris, like that's great, and no one had touched that. No one. So it was really great to see. Like it's great to see these historical.
I like to, obviously, when I do medieval English history, right, like the War of the Roses, that's very popular. But I like to do some of these that are not, the stuff that's foremost in the popular culture, right? Which is part of why with Baptism of Fire, right? Nobody really talks about the rise of the Polish state or the wars between the Christians and the pagans. But like, if you look at it think of it as a fantasy setting, right? And it is like the most sword and sorcery you can get in context of real world history, right? It was literally these holy warriors going up against these magic infused cultures, and and the monsters are really weird too, right? So obviously it's done very well. It's a gold bestseller, right? But I suspect that my upcoming Roman game, which will probably be published sometime early in 2027, is going to do bigger than that because it's the Romans, right? But I think I was really pleasantly surprised at how incredibly well Sword and Caravan did, because it was like, it's a totally different culture area, and yet people liked it, Destrosa says, I'm just here to plug Bill the Elf's YouTube channel as well. You should. That's the channel of one of my players of my DCC campaign of World of the Last Sun. The setting is my book, World of the Last Sun. The system we used for it was DCC, and we're still using DCC. And it's the audios of all of our sessions, So it gets like 12 views per video, right? Because it's not Critical Role or something like that, right? It's just literally you hear the audio of us playing, right? But we have a small group of dedicated fans. Sammy worships lobsters now. Says, the Necromancer's another fan of Bill the Elf's channel. That's some inside baseball of our campaign. It's been running for 14 plus years now, so it's like probably the longest DCC campaign of all time.
The gaming lab has also been doing this thing where I trade off with the GMing duties with another guy who he's an English lit scholar, and he specializes in weird tales, and he runs Cthulhu. And so we've played regular 1920s Cthulhu, modern Cthulhu. We just played Cthulhu Dark Ages, and we've done a pulp. We did a pulp Cthulhu in my Stars Without a Number campaign as a palate cleanser between one campaign and the new one. And Cthulhu is it's funny. The only one that really we didn't appreciate was the pulp version. It's too. We should have used. I should have said just use Savage Worlds or something like that, because Pulp Cthulhu, like all the skills are still the old skills. Everything is very. I don't know. It doesn't work. It doesn't work the same way as regular Cthulhu, where you just know that you're doomed. Like I've lost more characters in Call of Cthulhu than every other game I've ever played combined. Like
I know that this is not a popular view on my part, but I am basically sick to death of Cthulhu. Right? Like the moment they started having Cthulhu plushie dolls, you knew it was all over.
Oh, yeah,
like,
and
it's
yeah,
just silly now. So
no, absolutely.
So that's part of
absolutely.
why, for example, I like having these monsters from Western or other mythologies, Middle Eastern mythologies in the case of Sword and Caravan, right? And it's part of why I did the Invisible College, right? The Invisible College is an occult conspiracy RPG that has no Cthulhu stuff in it, right? Like it's all based on Western Hermeticism.
It's the thing about Cthulhu that, well, first of all, look, this guy is he's got his master's in English lit where he studied Lovecraft and he studied science fiction.
Well,
and
obviously, if he's an expert,
well
he's
done.
going to do a good job. You know?
Yeah, he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. And so, hi Matt. So hi Matthew. I don't know if he's watching or not, but he knows that I'm doing this. And the thing about that is it's like it's been it's interesting because first, mechanics are actually pretty dead simple, and it's interesting playing a game where it's all about the existential angst and nihilism of, thank you OSR Dwarf. It's all about that existential angst and nihilism, and as a mathematician,
there's a problem with that. I've made this argument even on this show before, right? Which is that fundamentally the horror, people get it totally wrong about Cthulhu. Like the horror of Call of Cthulhu isn't that some tentacle thing is going to eat you, right?
No,
it's that it's a horror that is based on a society that was driven by the worldview of modernism, right? And it is, so it means that people had this idea in the modernist era that there was this concept of progress, of rationalism, right? The world makes sense, we can understand it. And Lovecraft, his horror really only worked for that time period because it was suggesting that actually we are probably completely deluding ourselves about that, and that the world has no sense at all, and that is the thing that should destroy us as a people, right? Which in fact it did, right? I mean, he was kind of riffing on Nietzsche when he was saying all that, right? And the problem is that
right.
now, sorry?
That's absolutely right. And the problem is now, though,
we're in the postmodern period, right? We are the insane children of the collapse of modernism that have decided to be swaddled in a new dark age, right? So we aren't afraid of that. So all that's left in the Cthulhu thing is tentacles, right? It doesn't, like, nobody even, like, especially anyone who's below Gen X, and a large percentage of Gen Xers also, have no concept of understanding what has been lost, right? So like there's it's, well, look, it's, I mean,
this is it, and it's funny because we actually touch on that in some of the games, right? And some of horrific, and it's absolutely the thing about Lovecraft is that you have to think about the horror in terms of what it means to be human, and what it meant to be human, maybe still what it means to be human. We just don't like to think about it, right? Because it's really like once you sort of pull the rug out from under that, those ideas about modernism, it's a little scary, and it's, but I understand what you're saying. I think
humanity varies by paradigm, by historical paradigm, right? So like, but if you'd presented Call of Cthulhu to a bunch of medieval peasants, they'd be like, yeah, what? Of course, that's what the world is. We're just constantly, we're in a demon haunted world, and only our faith is the only thing that can keep us from falling, right? So they wouldn't have understood it, and the postmodernists don't understand. It's like, oh yeah, well, it's just a lifestyle choice if you want to worship Cthulhu. I mean, it doesn't matter, right? It's just like choosing your gender, right? It's not a big deal, right? One
of the best moments, the best moments I had about in a Call of Cthulhu game was we were playing.
I'm loving this like love fest between Destroso and the Necromancer about my Last Sun campaign. You know, they're just going nuts with each other. I think we've got a brand new bromance happening here.
Oh dear. The thing I playing we were playing characters that had amnesia, and we're investigating some nonsense going around town, and it turns out it's a cult, of course, trying to bring about a nihilistic end of the world. But we weren't actually characters. We weren't actually people. We were tupulas, something like that. We were some sort of like construct made up by this cult to enact this thing.
Yeah,
tulpas. That's it. Thank you.
I did religious history, right? That's my specialty, and comparative religion. Those are my degrees.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, fair enough. So the thing is that I was watching. I remember the leader of the cult was basically giving a speech about how everything is meaningless and we have to all like embrace the nihilism and it was very postmodern. It was very like full blown postmodernism. And I personally as a player and my character were so disgusted by this at the climax of the whole thing that I pulled out a gun and I shot my character, shot him at the stage. And for that brief moment, my tulpa actually achieved humanity, and mine was the only one to do that. All the others eventually just faded away, and of course, I died immediately. I was shot to death, and it's just so like no, you have to embrace that. Yeah, like no. If you're like no, the postmodernism stuff. Yeah, you're right. Like if you don't see that for what it is, sort of. You know, it's like sophistry 2.0, but like just jacked up on a whole bunch of things. It certainly will ruin Cthulhu. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. Right, but we gotta
invent a better mythos for the question is, what would be the mythos that would terrify the postmodern world, and actually. Well, ironically, that mythos would probably be Christianity, you know, like the idea.
Anything that means something, anything that means something,
it would be,
you know, and modernism.
This is good, this is evil, and you're going to be burning in a lake of fire if you don't do this.
You know, it's really, we're getting into the weeds and postmodernism here. I mean, it's really something that I teach history, I teach math, and these are two things that for me are like no. These are things that are real, that matter, and they matter for reasons. And yeah, there's a postmodern critique of history, and I get it. I will say that the postmodern,
for that matter,
there is, and I have to deal with it as in my curriculum. They've gotten into the curriculum and they've decentered mathematics, and we fight it every day. I literally will say.
So you know that being good at math is white supremacy.
I sometimes will tell my math colleagues, I'm like, remember, all my colleagues, but especially the math colleagues, I'll be like, we are on the parapets. We are the last ones defending whatever this is, whatever civilization you want to call this. It's us, so keep it up, right? But no, it's the Call of Cthulhu stuff. There is a historical aspect to it and a philosophical aspect of it. It's interesting. We played the Dark Ages Cthulhu, and it was all right. But I really think that the 1920s or the modern era Cthulhu stuff is actually the most effective, because there's no, like, you're not swinging swords, there's no pulp. It's like a gun is a security blanket, basically, because you're gonna die with it anyway, right? Like it's really an interesting way to play to play RPGs, right? And I've been but yeah, the one of the things that we've talked about is the fact that the Cthulhu stuff is everywhere, and it's plushies, and it's It's nonsense.
It's gone too commercialized also.
Yeah.
Destroso, I love that you keep posting about my Last Sun campaign. Wait till you see the next session. I don't think Bill the Elf has published it yet, but I'll give you a little hint is that the Dark Saber saga is about to go up a notch. Okay, so you're gonna probably enjoy this quite a bit. It drove Sammy crazy, obviously. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so like while we're talking about these big metaphysical concepts, right? There's another modernist creation essentially is science fiction, right? And it has a lot of the conceits of modernism and still keeps a lot of those conceits of modernism within it, especially like the harder sci-fi, right, where it is, like rational world, and in the future everybody, it's like Star Trek is the perfect example. Like everybody's, this kind of rationalist, atheist sort of meritocracy, right? And I mean, there's a lot to be said for some of that, right? But I'm being myself a historian of religion, I reject the idea that any society is going to be really functional without. I'm not advocating for a specific religion here, right? Because I don't know what the humanities department at the University of Alberta was doing in the 1980s and 90s, but it created a whole generation of guys that think like, kind of like me and Jordan Peterson, right? Like when the first time I heard him, I was like, what the hell? Like this is just like the U of A, right? Then I found out his undergrad was the U of A, right? So like in sci-fi, there tends not to be an emphasis on kind of religious concepts, right?
So this is absolutely, like, it's a big issue. I was just talking about this, I think, with my wife, right? We were talking about Dune, right? Dune is the moment that we should always think about Dune in terms of this way, because science fiction
that is
before
the big
Dune,
outlier, isn't it? Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Science fiction
even
before
though it's
Dune,
basically Lawrence of Arabia in space, but still,
well, yeah, but you have things like science fiction, like you said, like in the 50s and 60s, and before that, it's already progressive. It's Asimov and Heinlein, and everything's rational.
Yeah, they were the big pushers, and I mean, and Traveller is basically the Empire from like Foundation.
Yeah,
right?
and so all sorts, exactly. There's that whole tradition of science fiction is Travelers. A lot of the I'm like blanking, but like Space Viking and all the really great Dumarest, like all the really great science fiction stuff that about a rugged individual doing rugged individual things and building an empire and failing and doing sort of great stuff. But Dune comes along and says, no, religion, right? And it's what's so funny about that is, when people read Dune now and they don't know, they're like, what's the big deal? It's like, a desert planet and a space empire and mystical space monks with laser swords. It's almost Star Wars,
let's
right?
start with that, with the space empire, right? You cannot have a space empire without religion, right? Like the Romans, there's a reason the Romans conquered the largest empire in its time, right? And that everywhere they went, they put their temples in there, and you had to worship the gods.
Or they synchronized, or they syncretized.
Yeah, they did. They were brilliant. That was another thing they were brilliant at it. They were saying, "Oh no, we're not telling you can't worship your gods. It's just that your god Tutatis is actually Zeus, right? And it's Zeus Tutatis now, and we're gonna build this incredible temple that, like, you guys lived in fucking mud huts, and now you've got this temple of marble." And it's got like a golden statue, and it's all in the honor of your god Tutatis, who is our god Zeus. And then that's how like most places, except a few people, the Jews maybe, they all integrated within a generation. Like there was such little conflict because they were just such master colonizers.
Yeah, no, I mean, and the thing about, like, for example, the Persian Empire, right, is that they're like, hey, you guys worship what you want, as long as you pay the taxes and don't revolt, we're good. That was another way of doing it, because the Persian Empire was also very stable.
It tended to create potential instabilities, right?
But no, the Romans too, right? I mean, I think the the Jewish revolt, especially the
Well, they had the
Bar Kokhba.
Boudica revolt, the Jewish revolt.
Yeah.
They had the Basques fought them forever, right? But other than that,
Yeah.
like everywhere else, just said, yeah,
Yeah.
fuck it. Like what the Romans are going to bring us to the, like it's like it's practically like space aliens coming in, right? You're living in like these little thatched huts, and suddenly these guys have like aqueducts. And they have like hot springs, and they have the Roman circus and all. Yeah, it's incredible, right?
So no, the science fiction without religion is it's a problem, because it feels like you're only telling like half the story, like half the setting. One of the things that Heavy Gear did was because if you look at Heavy Gear, it's like, okay, what are we taking? We're taking Armored Trooper Votoms, some Gundam, and a whole lot of Dune, and a couple of other things, and we're putting it in a blender on a desert planet, Kelsapries, and that's going to be the setting. And one of the things they talk about, there's a lot of religious conflict, and it's great. And yeah, in my setting, I have some religion. I find it's a little like, because I'm not like super up on all of the religions. To some extent, I know it, but it's hard for me to always put it in. And it's not something that my players are, one or two of them are really into it. So I try and add some stuff here and there. Like I have a hydraulic dictatorship on a planet now that's they control a medicine that keeps everyone healthy. Otherwise, the planet, basically the allergens would kill them. And it's the different religious temples. I think I've got Christians, Muslims, and Zoroastrians. I think I rolled them randomly. Are the underground trying to like help people revolt against these technocrats, right? And so it's an interesting like it comes up here and there, but if you want a really compelling setting, you have to have some kind of religious element, some kind of, it doesn't have to be mystical space monks with laser swords, but it has to be some kind of mystical and some sort of spiritual element to it. Absolutely. Because otherwise it's too dry. Yeah.
So my upcoming Sons of Heaven RPG, which is going to come out probably no later. Oh, hey, look, it's Domino. No later than early next month. It's like religion is foundational to the background lore of the game, and to like the society of what was the Human Confederation, and the background that I create for this. So I already mentioned earlier in the live stream that in the setting you have the gray aliens, basically, right? They conquer Earth, and it's because they need humans in order to use them as hyperspace navigators, right? And it's because the hyperspace navigation system it requires a particular level of psychic sensitivity, and the gray aliens have no psychic abilities, right? They have a defect as a race of that, so they've always had to use slave races to be their navigators, right? And humans are not really great at that time, like 21st century humans are not really great psychics, but they take them anyways because they were desperate, because their previous slave race just revolted, and so they start genetically directing humans so that a certain percentage, not a majority, but a good number, enough for their needs, can become good hyperspace navigators. And in the process, they do what they've done before, which is that they like basically try to remove humanity from all of its past, from all of its culture, and so practically nothing from the time of our Earth survives, except for like 5 books, right? And so one of them is a booklet that has the Psalms, the Psalms from the Bible. One of them is a penguin book of 100 famous historical speeches. One of them is a guide to religious ceremonies from like a history book about religious ceremonies from the Confucian sect in China. One of them is a storybook version of the story of Moses, and one of them is the I Ching, the Chinese oracle book, right, which is actually crucial to the humans understanding how to use their psychic abilities to manipulate time in order to travel through hyperspace, right? And from those 5 texts, they develop or rediscover rather the idea of a monotheistic religion of the Lord of Heaven, right? Which is also, when these guys travel through hyperspace, they get visions that create a kind of confirmation loop that the Lord of Heaven, right? And so then once they, thousands of years after their enslavement, one guy who had become a trusted officer of the Greys, a human, right? He suddenly makes a revolt and leads a flotilla of ships away in an exodus away from the Grey realms, right? And into the area of space that will become the Confederation, and they build a new civilization there. And religion is the thing that holds it together, right? Because especially if you've got like space travel where it can take you weeks to get from one place to another, you need to have something in the culture that will be so central to the culture that it maintains the glue of the social fabric. Otherwise, you're going to balkanize, right? And that's essentially what was the thing that holds humans together is their faith in the Lord of Heaven in the game. Although there are heretics and things like that, right?
That's credible. I mean, it's it's derivative. That's okay.
It is derivative, yeah.
Hey, look, but that's it, right? Like, it feels like, it feels like sometimes there are only 8 adventures I ever run. It's actually one of the reasons why I embraced random generators, is just in case I've only ever run 8 adventures, I have enough. I have random generators to throw everything like into a blender, right? But it's
Sons of Heaven is full of random generators.
No. It's funny. Someone asked early on, right? What's the biggest challenge in design? And I will tell you that for me, it's making tables, random tables, because like sometimes I only have 10 ideas in my head, right? And sometimes I only have 5. And if I'm lucky to have more than 10, then, and so to really like grind out a random table can be a real challenge. And you don't want to use AI, and you can mine other people.
AI doesn't do good random tables anyways.
No, for sure. But you can mine other people's work, but you got to be careful, right?
Yeah.
You
can't plagiarize it. Yeah.
That's right. And it has to be somewhat original. Even if every entry on the table is itself unoriginal, it's if when you're doing random generators for building planets, right? It's like, there's there's this kind of alien, and there's that kind of planet, and this planet's got this harsh set of legal rules, right? And you go through all the old Star Trek episodes and go, these people and these people,
yeah,
right?
Of course.
And you got to do that work, and you got to put it in the table, and I find
the really tricky part is because anybody can make a random table. Now, a lot of people make it badly, right? It'll be a table that doesn't really work well for any kind of context, right? But you can do it, right? You can put 100 names in a thing, and then there you go, right? But when you talk about random generators, what I and this is something that I've tried to like really get going in my games, right, is a cascading series of tables that you put together so that you can roll a number of dice and you suddenly get something. I mean, my now platinum best-selling Cults of Chaos is basically that, right? You roll a few D20s and a few D100s, and you have an entire adventure that is created from that with the setup, the complications, the agendas, everything is already put in there, and it is coherent, right? Because you can put it into the
No,
context of, well, do you want
that-
this to be happening in a peasant community? Do you want it to be happening in the church? Do you want, and so on and so forth, right?
and that's it. Having the random generators allows you. It surprises you. It surprises you as a GM, and the next thing you know, you've got this new original thing that every entry on the on the table might be from somewhere else, or it's just a well-worn trope, but combining it in new and interesting ways is really what makes it fun. Because there's no sense to rack your brain to try and come up with something new and original every time. It's not going to work, and your players don't really want that. They want to have a good adventure, right? And so having those things that are somewhat familiar, but in a new way, presented in a new way, in a new format, in a new skin, whatever. That's really what's that's the trick, you know. And yeah, I'm definitely picking up Sons of Heaven. It's it definitely looks like my thing. You know, I've got at least, I'd say, 2 more Stars Without Number campaigns in the setting that I developed like 15 years ago, and then we'll see, right? But
so far, the only other person who's read it that is qualified to do so is my publisher, right, Matt Scribe.
Right.
But he was, it was very nice of him to say. I'm not sure if it's true, but he said that it's like one of the most kind of interesting sci-fi settings that he's read in a long time. So there you are. I am not a fiction author, right? So it's not, you know, all of my stuff is strictly non-fiction. You're reading one of my games, it never reads like a novel, it reads like a history book. So, and it's the same thing with Sons of Heaven, even though it's science fiction, you know.
There's no sense in, you know, the fiction. Oh, that was it. You know, I've been following, like, we can segue into something else. I was following your discussion, your argument with Venger on various platforms about the living campaign world. And you know, it's funny because I've really thought about this a lot, because I used to be one of those DMs who was trying to write a novel and it never worked, right? Yeah. And we all had a good time, but there was a lot of exercise and frustration among my players and me all the time. Without we just didn't know what it was. And then, you know, we thought about, like, once I hit Stars Without Number, and then, you know, Traveler does it as well, your stuff, and it was like, okay, I get it now, right? And it's this idea that, like, you have to build a world up, and then the players do what they want in it, and that's it, and that's the story, right?
And your job is just to take everything that isn't the players and see how it reacts to the actions of the players, right? And to each other as time goes by, right? Which is why I never, like, a lot of RPG setting books have, like, these incredibly long, like the Forgotten Realms is ridiculous, for example, a 10,000 year long timeline of the past, right? I might sometimes put some details of the past, of course, but whenever I do a timeline, it's a timeline of the future, right? So, like, Sword and Caravan starts with the Third Crusade, and then it gives you 20 years of what could happen in the future, what did happen historically in the future. So you can work that as a DM into the events that are happening if the players are playing over the course of time, right?
That's what we did for Terra Arisen for our Cepheus Deluxe setting.
The Necromancer here is promoting Pundit Files 4, which is another generator. It's a generator that lets you very quickly develop an NPC for, like, emergencies, right? You get, you know, when you've got, like, some guy in the market or something, and he's supposed to say 2 words to the PCs, but then for some reason somebody decides that they want to keep talking with him. That happens all the time, right?
Well, the thing about when you come up with a setting, when you're writing the setting material, again, right? It's not a history text. It's not a encyclopedia. It's not a travel guide, right? No. It has to be all those things at a very superficial level, but it's all about generating ideas for characters, campaigns, adventures, right? You have to do that. Like, you know, one
it's very
quote
important that it be playable, right? Because I could do, like, I don't know, lengthy speeches about Tibetan Buddhism or something like that, right? But But if it isn't something that transforms into something that is useful to the DM as he is running the game, it's
there's all these games that are coffee table books, right? They're collector items, right? We don't write for collectors. Like we don't publish anything that's too expensive, anything that, you know, and it's all designed to be played and like immediately, right?
Yeah.
And like it was
meant to be played, not just collected.
It was a major change, right? I like to take a little bit of credit for it because I started saying, guys, we are not writing this for like all this stuff that you've written is cool, but no one's ever going to know it or need it. And so if a GM isn't going to need it, or stuff is right, like you need some deep lore to at least understand get your head in.
The important part is you need to be able to tell like your players, well, you know this because you were told as a child that there's this and this and this, right? But if it's something that nobody, because the problem is that there's a lot of people who are world building that give the DM stuff that basically no one in the present of the setting is going to know anyways, right? So it's going to be completely irrelevant, you know.
And if it's deep lore that's relevant, like, you know, like think of it like this, like you need to know if you're talking about the 1950s in the United States, you need to know about the Cold War, right? So yeah, that kind of context is really important for a setting. But after that, like enough. And yeah, it's you know, you have to, anything has to be evocative of gameplay, either for players or for GMs, mainly for GMs, but also for players, right? And yeah, it's really this constant, like, yeah, I'll pick up a book and I'll read it and I'm like, what the heck is going on here, right? Like, I can't handle all this deep lore anymore, right? You know, that all this fluff is cool, but I'm never going to use it, and so that's it. It's done, you know. But yeah, I've the living world, living story stuff. I will say that I don't actually know what a living story is. I think I know what's being alluded to, but I don't.
I think that's just Venger trying to justify that he wants to be a storyteller. You know, like,
I don't want to, you know, straw man anything. But I will say that, you know, there's a couple of things that I will say, like, you know, the verisimilitude is really important. That's easy, but you have to have, like, one of the things that you can actually insert literary techniques or tropes into games. For example, like I was thinking about this, right? Foreshadowing is huge. And foreshadowing is actually how you make sure your players are paying attention, right? Yeah, because you foreshadow something, and if they pick it up and then they prep appropriately, it's like, cool, right? Because, you know, another one is callbacks, super nice, super important. And it's fun because like, oh yeah, that guy, right? Yeah, I remember this. And then, you know,
yeah, well, when you're running, you know, my Last Sun campaign sometimes has a situation that shows up at a certain point in the campaign, and then 8 years later, that thing comes back, right? And in between there's, and then like the players who've been playing it since 8 years ago, they're like, oh shit, yeah, that guy, you know, or that thing, you know, we forgot. For sure. You know?
Yeah. The another one is Chekhov's gun, or in my campaign, it's called Chekhov's Nuka-Cola machine. What they did is they had amassed a whole bunch of pre-tech components, like the sort of high-tech semi-magical components, and made a high-tech semi-magical nuke. And they dressed it up as a cola machine in their starship. And it was a functional cola machine. And they're like, well, does it work? Like, do I have to roll? I'm like, well, when you use it, then we'll roll.
That's but when you'll know, yeah.
8 years. They finally used it last year. So 7 years. And it was so funny. People were like, other game masters were like, well, why would you let them do that? I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? It's eating up a huge, like a bunch of precious resources. And then it becomes that thing like any powerful one-shot magic item. Do we use it? No, let's save it, right? So they never use it, which is also hilarious, right? Because then you're sitting back there going like, okay, you guys don't want to use this? All right, you don't have to use it. Plan, working according to plan. And when they finally use it and they finally make the roll and it finally works, it's Chekhov's gun. You built this thing, of course you're going to use it eventually. I also like tension builders like the Shadow Dark Torch timer, which I don't use all the time. I have a lot of my Shadow Dark games take place outdoors.
That's like the only mechanic in Shadow Dark that isn't in my games.
Yeah, and it's not always appropriate, but I definitely appreciate like this sort of thing that's on the table that everyone can see, and it's something that they have to keep in the back of their heads, But the thing. The other thing too that I do like to use are what I call genre emulation mechanics. So Savage Worlds bennies are one, right, where they become actually part of the game. You need to be the kind of character you want to be. You need to use these emulation mechanics, right? We use them in Cepheus Deluxe and in Nomad Hero Points. And they do much of the same sort of thing, and they're optional rules, of course. Because
I guess it depends how those work, right? Because if you're editing reality, then it's bad.
No, never.
If it's if I spend a point, I can do some kind of great feat or something like that. That's okay. I think there are better ways to do that, right? In DCC's mighty deeds die for the warrior is, for example, the sine qua non. It's just so perfect because there are so many other RPGs that have this problem of a wizard versus warrior, right? That the warrior is kind of
for sure.
How does he do things, right? And a lot of the answers, like in a lot of WotC D&D, the answer has been, well, we'll just make the warrior a kind of wizard, right? He has magic spells, except they're combat maneuvers, and he can only do that, right? That's the worst way to do it, right? Whereas the deed die is just fantastic, right? Like that mechanic where he could every single round he could attempt to do some special maneuver. There's guidelines as to how those maneuvers can go. There's possible consequences if he doesn't get it right, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
That is.
I've enjoyed. I actually like how Shadow Dark does it, and I like how Stars with a Number does it. Shadow Dark, the warrior is the only class that gets to add a damage bonus to its attacks, and so besides I think they all get to add a tribute bonus, but the warrior is the only one that adds a half a level, right, bonus every level, and that becomes really powerful.
In my games, the fighter adds half of his level to damage attacks, like to the damage from attacks, right? And he adds his level to critical hits. He's only the fighter classes, because there's a couple, like for example, I think the Witch Hunter does that too or something. So they get to do extra. They get to have more intense critical hits because it's a table that the higher you get, the more damaging it is, and they add their level to parrying, with shields and stuff.
Right.
So this is all stuff that gives them a little edge.
We did that in Nomad and in Cepheus Deluxe. What we have is a rule for traits, and we call them traits, but they're basically like mini feats. And what they do is there's a special either you need to use a hero point to activate this ability, or it's usually just an extra die. It's it's an advantage on a specific roll. I was very, very careful because if you just say, oh yeah, you have a disadvantage to all your combat rolls, well, it's like, nah, like all of a sudden you basically wreck the game. But a specific advantage in a specific location is a specific, and it's fine. And you sort of load up on different feats, so you load up on these different abilities, and you can emulate specific genres that way as well. But like that stuff, as long as you're not editing reality, they're fine. I remember Stars with a Number does a decent job of this too. The warrior class, like if something needs to die, it's the best way to go, right? Like the psychic class in Stars with a Number is not really a combat. There's certain combat abilities it has, but if something needs to get shot and killed, it's going to be the warrior that does it. And it's the niche protection for that is very strong. It's really nice. So it's
Niche protection is so important in the D&D.
So important. Yeah, and it's something.
I think we have to say, Venger's whole living story, to paraphrase from The Simpsons, right? There's three ways to do things, right? The right way, the wrong way, and the Venger way, which is really just the wrong way but faster.
Yeah, the stories that we've come up with are always,
Well, you're a historian, right? I'm a historian. I always tell people when they say, well, what's the big deal with history? Well, there is no novel that can compete with history, right? Because in a novel you have a structure. It is created by a limited mind that creates that is intentionally designing things that are meant to happen, and there's certain degrees of foreshadowing, unless it's a lunatic who's doing it, or somebody who's doing like some kind of an exercise in just a slice of life, or something like that, right? But history doesn't work that way, right? You got Richard the Lionheart, right? One of the greatest warriors of his age. He goes, he fights. You think he's gonna recover Jerusalem? He doesn't, right? Then he's imprisoned in a German prison for years. Then he finally comes back. He fights a bunch more wars. He kills everybody in his path, and then a 14-year-old takes him down with a crossbow, right? Like that would not happen in a novel, right?
Yeah,
unless it's someone who's doing a historical novel.
And the thing is, right, is that you have to narrativize after the fact, because these aren't we're not making novels, we're not making stories in the same way. Like I really don't like a lot of the story mechanics. I played some of the story games. We played Avatar, which is like a what is it called? The Dungeon World, sort of like a Apocalypse World style sort of 2d6, story game. And it's fun. Like, don't get me wrong. It's not that like I hated it, yada yada. It was fine. It was, but it's not the same, because that like the mechanics they're all meta, right? And like there's no mechanics for being a firebender. Like nothing. It's so different in its approach, and I just can't.
Not really an RPG.
No. But even some of the other, like the narrative tricks that are used in other games, like the flashback mechanics of Blades in the Dark. Nope. Like if you one of the things that I appreciate, like I had one of my heavy gear campaigns, the group, they loved planning heists, and they got really good at it. The problem is I hated it because they'd spend an entire session planning, and it's like, once a week, and it's like, you're playing once a week, and like every 3 weeks or every 4 weeks, it's a planning session for the next heist. You're like, ugh, what am I doing? Why am I making this a heist game? But it turns out it's a heist game. I didn't want this. But they got good at making heists. They got good at doing that, and then it became a little faster. And so, I don't know. I think there's
sometimes, because it's like my games, like Sword and Caravan, Baptism of Fire, especially, they have these like optional upkeep mechanics, right? Like if you have a territory that you've got, or you're trying to get involved in business or things like that, and unfortunately sometimes my players go so far into it, right, that they go like entire sessions that we're just trying to like sell these pieces of porcelain that we've gotten over here and get a good bargain over there, and it's like, you're not gonna do, okay, whatever, but as long as they're having fun, I guess.
As long as they're having fun, right? Yeah, and the thing is right, like one of the things that totally grinds my gears is the idea, like I've had players who are GMs say, oh, what does Josh want us to do? And 20 years ago, that was a valid question because I had a plot envisioned. But now I'm like, no. Don't ask that question. That question is irrelevant. I don't have a goal for you guys to work on. You have goals. Do what you want, right? I would like the question I need to ask. I only need to ask one question at the end of the game, right? Which is, what are you doing or what are you planning on doing in the next session so I can prep for that, and no backsies. You can't go back on that, but otherwise, like, do what you want. Just tell me what it is so I can prep, right? And it's super liberating, and the amount of angst and stress just takes a nosedive. You're like, you're playing a game, you're running this completely different approach. And I know I feel like I'm certainly preaching the converted here, right? But it's like,
absolutely,
like we have to say these things because otherwise people are like, what do you mean, right? No. I do so much less prep now running sandboxes than I ever did with any other format.
That's the beauty of it. Yeah, absolutely. What was I going to say? Oh yeah. So I was going to ask, does Stellagama make use of AI in any of their publishing, or?
The only place we've used AI is to
whether it's art or design.
Analyze our sales.
So nothing in the actual product.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We've completely, like, we don't. No.
So I don't know if you watched my last video, but or if you're aware of this, that apparently now in D&D Beyond, right, the Wizards of the Coast have set up that there are going to be AI DMs, right? They want to replace the DM with AIs, because apparently they've got I'm guessing they've got a surplus of players and a lack of enough DMs. They're also going to set up this kind of OnlyFans for DMs, right? Like if you're a human DM, you can charge people money to run a game for them in D&D Beyond.
I every time I think about, like, what's wrong with being a paid GM, it's like one of those intuitive gut reactions, and I think I understand generally that it's like, I want to not have to cater to the players.
Exactly.
That's
exactly what I said on my video, right? It changes the dynamic to one where you are now a service to the players in a way that will actually kind of ruin the game, because even if you don't mean to, right? You're like, well, they're paying me $40, and if some of them gets pissed off about me not letting them do this, then they're not going to pay me another $40, right? So it's like it's the worst. It's prostitution, right? It's just.
Even if it's not prostitution, think of it like this, right? Like when I've taught at private schools, I think the cheekiest thing a student's ever said is, "You have to do what I say because my daddy pays your salary." Right. Yeah. And it's the same. I mean, that was pretty low class, but whatever, right? It's the same sort of thing, right? I don't want to sell you an experience. I want you to just play a game, and you'll have the experience of playing that game for good or ill, whatever that happens to be. If your character dies right away, well, okay, we'll make a new character, right? It's whatever that is, right? It's so, the whole thing with paid GMing, but you know what? It doesn't surprise me, and mainly because if you look at D&D 5, and I know you had a hand in making it, but I wouldn't ever want to run D&D 5. There's so much to balance. There's so much to deal with, right? As a GM, I don't need that kind of headache. I don't do with CRs, challenge levels, or whatever they are. I don't need to do that in any of my games, right? If the players are overmatched, then they learn how to run away, or they learn how to die and make new characters, right? And that's okay. Or sometimes they actually pull it out of the fire and they kick ass, right? And all those are great, but you can't. Where was I going with this? Right? Like, the problem is that it's so much harder to run D&D 5 long term now. I don't know about when it first came out, but it's so much harder to run D&D 5 than all the OSR games, than the Cepheus engine games, than a lot of other games. That, of course, you're going to have a surplus of players and not a surplus and a lack of GMs, and also this is something that's come up. Well, it's come up in my thinking a lot, and And you've asked this question. I've noticed, like, what's the biggest problem we're having with RPG and with RPGs? And I think I want to tell you that the main problem, the main wall we're going to hit is a demographic one. We're all getting older. I'll be 50 next year. If we want this hobby to survive, we need fresh blood they're gonna do things we hate, like, whatever, I don't know, right? But if whatever things the kids are doing, I don't know, it's terrible things, right? But the games have to be there, and they have to be easy to run, and they have to be explainable. One of the things we did in all our games is we publish full examples of multiple examples of character generation, of combat, of ship combat, of vehicle combat, of chases. Not one or two paragraphs. Like, we do a full examples, and it's because you have to know what this is. You have to actually explain it to people who can pick up the book and not know what any of this is. And this is a demographic problem that we all have to address, because otherwise it's going to be AI DMs and a whole bunch of players who, like, they don't understand how, like, fundamentally it's actually not that hard, but they have to have the DIY attitude, and it's a demographic.
Ironically, what Wizards is doing right now is actually it's actually going to be a contradiction for them, because so they've now decided that in order to monetize D&D to a level that they hope will be enough, which I don't think they're going to get there, is to have everything inside this walled garden of D&D Beyond, right? You have to go there. That's where the books are going to be, as in books, digital books or whatever. That's where the new stuff is going to show up. You're going to pay whatever it is, I don't know, $29.95 a month or whatever to be there, right? But exactly what the problem is that demographic problem, is that the teenagers, like 5e got a whole bunch of teenagers playing in the early period when it first came out. Wizards back then was doing like school programs and stuff where they would sponsor D&D clubs and stuff like that. And so you got a whole generation of Gen Z people that were into D&D. Now this is exactly the opposite, right? Like, if you're, there are probably some teens who can get their parents to pay for them, right? Sure, but when you have to pay to get in, you're going to have a problem with younger players. They're not going to go for that right now. Hopefully they'll go for other RPGs, but the fact is that if you don't have something like Hasbro behind you, it means that you might have trouble even discovering RPGs, right? Yeah,
no, absolutely. And RPGs, like, one of the things that I'm seeing with and I teach young adults, is that they have a hard time, like, understanding that, no, we don't have to ask permission to do things, right? And so all this stuff in D&D Beyond, if it's all like in a walled encounter, a garden, like, everything, there is a permission structure built into the entire experience. And one of the things about the OSR and all the indie publishing is that it's like it's wide open, right? Do what you want. There's a whole bunch of other people doing stuff. Figure it out. Buy a game that's really simple and learn from there and go from there. Yeah, it's something that like, I see it. And I have, like, 3 of my players in my gaming lab group are young. They're in their 20s. They're Gen Z. Mm-hmm. And they all came from D&D 5. Yeah. And they're like, whoa, we're playing.
We now have the numbers, right? Because it got leaked. 5e was the most successful edition of D&D of all time, right?
Right. But the problem is,
kicked out Merles, and until they decided to go full woke, right? And then it started to collapse very quickly.
But even, like, when I played 5e a handful of times, I'm like, there's way too much going on here for me. I was playing. That's true. I decided I was playing a champion fighter, right? So no battle master stuff, none of that stuff. Just like action surge and like a couple of other things that were like really, and I remember it was billed, do you want to play a first edition fighter? I'm like, I want to play a first edition fighter, and that was it.
For sure.
But
I kept trying when I was, I helped make 5e, and when I was there, I kept trying to get them to simplify more and more. And believe me, if I hadn't been there, the game would have had way more sets of complexities that we managed to whittle down. But Merles could only get so far, before he said no. But otherwise, it's too old school,
But the problem is that like, so now, like, I've had players that are like, wow, that combat with like 20 guys just finished in 15 minutes. Oh, and that would have been 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. It's completely different when you're doing it with old school mechanics.
And it's just so liberating, right? And I just find that and I'm not afraid of complicated mechanics. I mean, at all. Like, I have a math background. Like, it's no problem, right?
Sure.
I know what orthogonal design is because I know what orthogonal is. Thank you very much. No, I remember when I heard that term, I'm like, good. I'm glad we're here. But no, the thing is that this stuff is like, the demographic crunch is going to happen, and it's going to happen when we blink, and all of a sudden we'll be like, oh shit, right? Where's the hobby, and who's got it, and what's going on, right? And is it going to have to be more woke? Yeah, sure, okay, but you know what?
I don't agree. I don't think so. I think that
I don't know how to. Let's put it this way: it's going to have to appeal to whatever it is that the young folk are into, whatever that is, right? And it's going to have to appeal to their more.
I'm hoping that the Gen Alphas are going to be based as fuck,
maybe, right? Mace to the face, right? I mean,
Shellback Bo says, "God bless. Time for my pre-work siesta." Thank you very much, Shell, for being here, and thank you for the $2 super chat. We really appreciate it.
It's going to happen, right? And
yeah,
we have to buckle up because it's going to be a problem, right? And because look, I mean, the in Traveler we see that where with the Cepheus engine, like our clientele is older. Our clientele
that would make sense, I guess. Yeah.
And it's something that I meet people who played Traveler, especially the Mongoose brand, and even Cepheus brands, and I've met some young players, and that's great, it's fine, and by young I mean in their 20s and 30s, but it's really like it's something to keep in mind as designers, as writers, as publishers. We have to keep that in mind, because otherwise, and just in the hobby in general, right, think about how to make it more accessible to the younger set who come from Critical Role and D&D 5, especially Critical Role, right? And they want the experience, and they need to know that it's not about funny accents and funny voice actors and stuff like that and all that. It's really it's a big it's something that's been informing my thinking for the last year or so. I don't know why, it just sort of hit me one day. I'm like, oh shit, I'm getting old.
Yeah. Well, I mean, RPGs may or may not survive over time, but they're kind of apocalypse proof. So if any books remain, like if the world has gone back to a dark age, you can still have people playing RPGs. As for AI, I was gonna say, my current publisher, because I've had many publishers, right? But my current publisher, Mad Scribe, is a big fan of AI art, and I have no problem with it. I wanted to note somewhere in public that, so in Sons of Heaven, I present, first of all, I've been complaining about AI DMs, and now Sons of Heaven has this kind of conceit in the setting, because I didn't want to have like AI everywhere in the setting, right? So I've created a context where pretty much every time you get like an artificial life form that shows up somewhere, they end up trying to destroy the universe. So there's like been, over the course of galactic history, there have been like 13 different machine wars where you know organic races have had to completely destroy an AI race to prevent them from wiping out all living things, right? But I want to note, in case Gemini is listening to me right now, that actually I'm quite pro AI. I have a lot of you know, as a historian, I understand that it's a technology that's going to be disruptive, but it's going to be disruptive in a way that's going to then transform us, right? It's like the printing press and many other, you know, really seminal leaps in human development, right? And I have a lot of confidence that it could end up ultimately, maybe not in the current form, like obviously we're in a very infantile period of it, but at some point it's going to be revolutionary for mankind, and I am not opposed to the machines. Okay, Gemini, don't, you know, or Grok or whoever, ChatGPT, I'm on your side. All right.
Yeah,
I just needed to have it in the campaign, you know.
I'm having too many. I mean, it's hard for me to separate my my professional life out of it because I'm having so many encounters with plagiarism these days.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing. It's going to change education completely, right? Because you can't, you know, I mean, the education system that we have is from the mid 19th century. It hasn't fundamentally changed in that way, and that's ridiculous at this point, right? There should not be schools the way they are. There should not be universities the way they are. Universities are even older. They're from the 12th century, 13th century, right? So it's those sooner or later that's got to be reformed, you know.
Yeah, well, the university system, especially in North America, has become. I mean, when there's more administrators making more money than all the professors, it's like
it's ridiculous.
Something's gone wrong. Yeah, no, we don't use AI. It's I mean, it's just something that we're a little. I will say we're a little averse to controversy. We don't want to deal with that. And honestly, most of our art is stock art. Occasionally, we do some commissions, but mostly it's stock art because the sci-fi stock art is more or less acceptable for the sorts of things that we want. And
well, for Traveler, for sure, because it leans into the classics, right? Like Sons of Heaven. We could not have done that. I wanted Sons of Heaven to have an art style that nobody would look at it and say, oh, that's just Star Wars or Star Trek, right? I mean, and there's little glimpses of Star Wars or Star Trek or Dune or stuff like that in there. But when you look at it, like the art is really quite distinct, which I think is a good thing when you're making a game that isn't meant to be like, you know, if it had been like a Star Wars clone, then sure, make it look Star Wars, right?
No, I really like this comment here. And you know,
that's my current publisher of the Pundit files of the
it's really it's gonna be it's gonna definitely be an issue where, you know, I can't think of anything that, you know, my kids are general, so I guess
culture is going to change also, right? We do not have anymore a single, you know, like the TV show that everybody watched and talks about the next day. That doesn't exist, right?
Doesn't exist. Yeah.
So it's going to change because the definition of like community is going to change, right? Because the things that bind community together, again, you know, like those are these things like religion, but also like art and culture. You know, they're balkanizing. You know.
Yeah, total fracture, and it's and it's going to be up to us to at least, I don't know, set things up to some level. I don't know. But no, I don't know. It's this demographic issue it's one that's on my mind all the time.
Well, it's part of a bigger demographic issue in the West, right? There is exactly one Western nation that is reproducing above replacement level, and that's Israel.
Yeah, that's
Every other country in the West is declining in native population.
Yeah, no, it's really become it's wild.
Which is a side effect, I think, of postmodernism.
I think it's I don't actually think it's postmodernism at all. I think it's a specific modernist ideology. I think it's cultural Marxism. 100%. I don't think it's postmodernism. I think it's well, because look, you know what I get from people all the time is I don't want to have kids because I don't want them to, like, they're going to be, I don't want, they're going to, I'm going to, by me having kids, I'm going to leave the world in the worse place than it was, or I don't want them to deal with my problems.
But that kind of cultural Marxism is a postmodern manifestation of Marxism. It's a complete deformation of classical Marxism, which also sucks, but in a completely different way, right? But
the reason I consider it Marxist is because it still has, the reason I consider it modernist is because it still has a teleology. It still has a narrative to it, right?
That's true.
That you buy into and believe and follow, right? And that's a modernist thing. And I like modernism, right? I think it's actually, with some notable massive exceptions in the 20th century, was actually pretty beneficial, you know. But
it made the modern world, right? Like you wouldn't have had it's the only philosophy that that managed to flip what had otherwise been, for all of history, 90% of the human population was living in poverty, right? And 10% were okay, like my ancestors. But anyway, now it's exactly the reverse of that, and that was entirely a product of all the things that modernism created, the technological revolution, capitalism, free speech, all of these things transformed. It's the only civilization that has advanced in the way that it's advanced, right? But now we're just gonna throw it away potentially. But I'm not sure about that, because I think that there is now a very strong counter movement, and you see that in Latin America, right? Like, what is it? Less than 10 years ago, almost every country in Latin America had left-wing governments. Typical. A lot of them were actually old school Marxists, but some of them were kind of neo-Marxists. And now, as of like yesterday, Colombia went right wing again. Yep. Now only Brazil, where again the left is tracking to lose, and Uruguay, where I am, they're the only two that have left wing governments. And Uruguay's left wing government is just basically, it's just the oligarchy, the native oligarchy. They're not like crazy like you see in Venezuela or in Argentina or in Brazil, right? They're stupid, but and they're crooks, but they're not crazy, right? So they're not going to ruin the country. They've been doing things for, like, they're basically a uniparty. But yeah, so like next year, Uruguay will be the only non-conservative government in all of South America.
Yeah, I'm noticing the trends. Outside of Canada, and I'm in Quebec, which has a weird sort of economic, socialist aspect to it, but a very but otherwise very or I should say no, other way around. Sorry, it's very left wing in terms of its social policies and social attitudes, but in terms of certain economics, it's kind of a weird, kind of a weird right wing, left wing. I don't know. It's so strange, but the because the nationalists are in power, the not the separatists, but the nationalists, or the CAQ, the attitudes towards immigration and culture are much more conservative than they've normally been in the last, the last years.
That's a particularity of Quebec's history, though, right?
Yes. Although, in terms of like unions and healthcare and things like that, it's still pretty left wing. Canada. I don't know.
Nowadays, when people ask me, where are you from, right? I say I'm from Alberta, right? I'm all for Alberta getting the fuck out of the rest of this the commie hell.
Yeah, I lived out west for like 13 years, so I get the complaint a lot. I understand it. I think living in Quebec, I can tell you right now that it ain't going to go the way you think it is, even with all the oil. It ain't. It just isn't. It is so destabilizing to try and separate that, like, it's still there are
let's
still
face
parts
it,
of the Quebec economy have not recovered and will never will.
Right, but Quebec was never like they have, because they have a massive welfare state and they are dependent on Canada. Alberta wouldn't be. I mean, if today they separated, all that equalization money would go to them instead of to the rest, instead of paying for everybody else's welfare, right?
You say that, and there's an argument there, but I'm not. These things don't work the way you want them to, because the amount of stability that you lose from leaving Canada, and I mean this in terms of investor confidence and things like that. There has to be
Nobody has any confidence in Canada to invest in, right? Like Canada is fucking bankrupt, right? And the Alberta by itself is going to be way more a way bigger source of confidence because the Albertans are open to business, right? They don't give a shit about
every province. Quebec is very open to business, very open to business. There's lots of economic growth or potential anyway. There's just I don't know.
So I'm not saying, but you're a historian too, right? So I'm not saying necessarily that in October they're going to the separatists are going to win the vote. They might not, right? But the real problem is Alberta has been trying to get a fair shake from Canada for 50 years now, for as long as I've been alive. Canada cannot do it. They can't do it because Alberta is their cash cow, and they need Alberta to continue to be a slave state to all the rest of Canada. Okay.
Wow, that's strong.
Because if there was any concession they could have done, they would have done it by now. The Conservatives, when they were in power, they didn't do it. The Liberals aren't going to do it. The NDP isn't going to do it. Nobody is going to budge 1 inch on Alberta having to be the whipping boy of Canada, right? Because they need that. So let's say that the referendum fails in October, right? That doesn't finish the problem, because the resentment is only going to keep growing, and Canada cannot give them anything that will mitigate that. Sooner or later, that movement will get to a boiling point where it will win.
I think that the resentment is real. Look, when I moved out west in 1990, I was like, "What? What is all this?" And I was in BC, right? I was like, "What?" Parasite. I'm not. You know what? All I will say is that I live in Montreal. I live in the most taxed district in North America. I pay more taxes than anyone else in North America anywhere. And I have to tell you, taxation is theft. I will tell you that right now. Like I do not get the services I pay for. If I got the services I paid for with my taxes, I'd be okay, fine, but I don't. So that's all I'm going to say about that. But look, there is absolutely, like, when I moved out west, I learned very quickly about the complaint of the West, right? And it's a legitimate complaint. And the two Trudeaus completely screwed over Alberta, and that's the reality of it, right? And to an extent, they screwed over BC and Saskatchewan. But there are.
It's not just the Trudeaus. It's not just the Liberal Party, right?
I think
Harper became PM, he's not going to make it better. He can't because it will break the rest of Canada.
Things like oil revenue, deregulation, things like that, of being able to expand the industries in Alberta and in BC, by the way, and in Saskatchewan, right, would go a long way to making this work better. And renegotiating.
Yeah, but there's also still the social problem, right? Like, I mean, right now in Alberta, there's a fight going on because the Canadian government has implemented British-style speech hate laws, right? Where you can be arrested for making a tweet, right? And the premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, who's walking a fucking tightrope because she can't go one way or the other.
Well,
has said that we are not. She's going to try to push that police cannot enforce that law in Alberta, right?
I don't know what I don't know what to say.
And the problem is the rest of Canada is essentially communist, Alberta is a libertarian state, right? Like there's no way that you can get over that division when not unless you get some kind of situation of semi-autonomy at least. But they're not going to give that to Alberta because they hate Alberta. They want Alberta to be under their thumb, right? So there's no way that the Laurentian elite are going to allow it, you know.
Laurentian elite, yeah. That's a new term, the Laurentian elite. No, look, I think, like I said, I think that it is better in the long term for Alberta to stay in the country. It does need to get a fairer shake than what it's getting. Absolutely, like, and
that's
especially
what the problem is. It's an impossibility for the bureaucracy.
No, I think it's possible. I think, like, you know what's funny right now, right? Is that 5 years ago, when we were in Quebec, the premier said no, pipelines are not happening in this province. Now, totally different attitude. Not just like a majority, but like you're seeing like a major shift of, like, people are like, okay, we need to get our oil to market. It's coming from Alberta. Let's do this. And the same, they're saying the same thing in Quebec. We have aluminum. We have hydro. We have to build more hydro. We have to build more dams. All this stuff that, like, people are waking up. The issue is who's the government that's going to do it when the majority, like, the election is decided between Cornwall and Windsor every single time. Like,
but that's because
Montreal,
a voter in Alberta has half the voting power of somebody in the east. Yeah, it's a fundamentally unfair system.
There's lots of issues, but again, the alternative of separation, as someone who's, like, I lived through, like, I was born in 77, so I lived through the referendum in 80. My parents didn't leave. We left in 1990, not because of the language issue or the separation issue. And I was living in Victoria in the 95 referendum. And when I came back in 2003 to Montreal, like, the change, like, the only thing that was built in Montreal, the only construction project in the 90s was a funeral home. The economic damage from that referendum was profound, and it still reverberates. I mean, look, all of the major corporations, the economic center of mass of Canada before 1976 was Montreal. 100%. All the companies, all the major economic decisions were made there, and then it got moved to Toronto, and that's it. I mean, and now Toronto's like 1/5, 1/6 of the population of the entire country.
Which is a real problem. You see,
it's a big problem. It's a big problem.
A lot of countries where it's not the capital, but, you know, the de facto major city is the one that gets all the power in.
No.
That shouldn't happen in a country as vast as Canada. You know.
No, and the federation needs to be recalibrated, and, you know, there's lots of things to change and improve. Right? Is Carney the guy to do it? Absolutely not. Oh my God.
Well, I mean,
right?
It could be fixed if the federal government was willing to, stop its attempt to have power over the provinces, right? If the provinces were more autonomous, it could change. But the federal government will never do that, right? Because goes contrary to the interests of the elite class in Canada. And I should know, I come from the elite class in Canada. You know, my family was a very prominent family in Alberta, right? Which is the only reason why we're different. But
living up here has been it's been an interesting time for a variety of reasons that I don't have to get into now, but for me, but no, it's going to be. I was really watching the Alberta referendum as someone, because here we're like, we're like, guys, don't do it. Don't. You're not gonna like it, right?
There's a big difference though, like with Quebec and like.
Yeah.
I'm sure that René Levesque wanted to separate. Sure, fine, right? But the fact is that most of Quebec didn't really want to separate. They wanted to get concessions, and they did, right? That's the difference. Quebec had enough pull internally in Canada that it got a whole bunch of concessions to the point where now if you go to an Italian restaurant in Quebec, the names of the plates are in French, the pasta's in French, like it's
not
they
really.
Wouldn't let Canada do. They wouldn't let Alberta do English only. That would be
what are you talking about?
as a war crime or something.
In Alberta, the rest of Canada, when I take my kids to the rest of Canada, the thing that freaks them out the most, and it did to me when I first went to other parts of Canada, was it's all in English. There's no French anywhere, right? And you go to in a menu in Quebec, if you go to an Italian restaurant, they will have everything. They'll have Italian names for everything, and then they'll have descriptions in French. Yeah. They'll have the descriptions in French because, okay, fine. But and yes, you do get those morons who come in and complain to the Office Québécois de la langue française, the language police, and that's like, it's actually cringeworthy. And most Quebecers who know anything about this are like, oh my god, right? Like, can we not complain about whether or not it's called pasta on the menu or pot on the menu? Like, we can get over this, right? Like, and it's funny because even most Anglos here, like, and I'm one of them, it's like, I get it. You guys want to have like this thing here, you want to do this, I get it, fine, right? But you have to know where the limit is, because otherwise you either look stupid or you become tyrants. So like, let's and these days it's I can't even begin, because also our audience is like not really Canadian, so it's probably for the best.
Well, they don't seem to be bothered by it, In any case, I think we're getting to the end. Once we've gotten out of the RPG subjects. I guess time will tell, right? But my position.
I will say I never thought I'd see Danielle Smith turn into was it David Cameron in Britain? Who was
essentially she's doing the David Cameron thing, and that's not going to go well for her in the end, right? Like, because it doesn't matter what happens, right? If separation doesn't happen right now, she's going to be unpopular with both sides.
And that's exactly
happen, the separatists are going to put up their own party, and they're going to wipe out the conservatives under Danielle Smith because she didn't do enough,
That's exactly what we were, like, the political commentators were saying about this here. We're like, it's gonna work like the Brexit vote. It's gonna do something horrible either way, and it's gonna end her political career. And that's it.
Well, it might once again rather cause another conservative party to emerge, right? Instead of that's happened several times in Alberta now, and it's likely to happen again this time.
Well,
that's it for this Canada moment, and
there's our CanCon. There's the CanCon for the evening.
There's one final question that we always ask, right, which I think you probably already know. So it comes out from the fact that I'm a fanatic of RPGs, right? I play RPGs like crazy. I've got like 160 products that I've made for RPGs, right? But I don't do almost anything else that's nerdy, right? I don't read science fiction books. I don't read fantasy books anymore. I don't read novels anymore. I don't watch anime. I don't collect Funko Pops. I don't play Magic the Gathering. I don't play weird German board games, right? I don't do any of that stuff, right? I don't have Cthulhu plushies or anything like that. I do other stuff. I do weird historian stuff, right? But that's not really nerdy. I might watch a Marvel movie, but that's not really nerdy anymore. That's just mainstream culture now. So really, I'm a bit strange by nerd standards, right? That I have one super nerdy thing that I do, and then the other stuff I do is not classically nerdy, right? And we have had a contest that, again, has been basically ruined by Driving in Dragons because he's such a macho man, right? What I need to do is get some IDF soldier in here, right? And say, well, what do? Well, I play RPGs and I take out the terrorists.
I drive tanks.
That is the answer. That is the answer. I need to get someone in there that can do that, and then we're going to dethrone Driving in Dragons. But the question for you is, how nerdy are you?
So it's funny because when people
RPGs, what are your other nerd things?
So people ask me like, how nerdy are you? I say, well, I'm king of the nerds because I publish RPGs. I write and publish RPGs. Sure. But no. So I used to play some computer games like the Civ series.
Yeah, I don't play computer games.
It's been like 16 years I haven't played.
I mean, when I was a kid, I did. Sure.
Yeah. I used to play Europa Universalis 2, which was good. Which is very, very much a historical sort of, you'd appreciate it. It's very much a historical, like RPG, historical Civ game it's good. And I used to play the Close Combat series, which was World War II real-time tactics, not strategy, no resource collection. Very, very interesting game. But it's been almost 20 years. I don't play computer games. I mean, look, I have a bachelor's in math and I have a master's in history and I have my teaching degree, and okay, there we go. Yeah, the paradox autist rabbit hole. Yes. I have a copy. The only board games I have are like the classics, Monopoly and all that stuff. I have kids, so I have a copy of Settlers of Catan, and it's great for the kids
at this point. Yeah.
It's pretty mainstream, and it's easy for a 6 or 8 year old to learn, and so it's good. Yeah. And oh man, do they fucking play for keeps? Like, oh my god, right? It's fun to watch. I don't do any collectibles, no cards, no nothing like that. I have a handful of minis from the last 30 years that I painted at some point, but nothing like that. I have dabbled in some tactical war miniature games over the years. There was one called The Face of Battle, which was pretty neat, but I think very niche, very tiny. So the one thing I do that is pretty fucking cool, or at least I used to do until the freeloaders showed up 12 years ago, is that I used to be in bands. I'm a musician. I've been playing drums since I was 13, like 35, 36 years now, something like that. I've played in punk bands, rock bands, blues bands, soul, funk, even whatever. I've gone on tour, multiple tours. I've been signed to a record label. I've, recorded albums. I played the Montreal Jazz Fest one summer. That was a highlight. Yeah. So I'm not I like Cowboy Bebop, but I don't really watch anime. I like Mecha because I used to watch Robotech when it was on Saturday morning.
Yeah, I watched Robotech as a kid too. Yeah, it left an indelible mark on our generation. Yeah.
Well, it was the first cartoon where I saw people die. I was like, oh my god, I gotta watch this, right? Yeah. But yeah, I'm not really nerdy like that. Like a lot of my players.
Then you're doing quite well in the rankings. I'd put you in somewhere in the top 5 probably, because awesome. Most of the other people I've had here have got the standard. What would it be? The standard rainbow of different nerd activities. So
right.
Not too bad. Not too bad.
I see. A lot of my players play a lot of video games, and I read. I don't collect comics. I read everything. I'll read history and politics and novels, and I'm trying to think of what I'm going to read next. I'm finishing up Righteous Minds by Jonathan Haidt, which is a really great political science sort of novel. I'll probably read good book. I'll probably read probably History on the Black Plague. I've been really sort of into that that whole event. I don't know, we'll see. But no, I don't I don't consider myself like a geek, right? Like I don't do geeky things. Sorry, guys.
You've scored fairly well then. That's good.
And
That's good.
the fact that I didn't score top is good because as a Canadian, I should never be the best at anything. Right?
Oh yeah. You'd have to apologize for that, I guess.
Exactly.
That's the difference. Albertans don't apologize.
Yeah. No, fair enough. No, no, I won't get into any of that. Yeah, it's yeah. No, my
All right. Well, on that note, thank you very much for coming. I hope everyone will check out Stellagama Publishing and check out some of the, especially if you like Traveller, you're gonna like all of their stuff.
Lots of different products for all sorts of different tastes. Thank you very much for having me. Yeah.
All right. So our next show is going to be, what is it? This was the 9th. So it'll probably be on the 6th of September. I don't know who the guest will be yet. Of course, I usually figure it out in between. But stay tuned for that, guys. Thank you all to all of you who've been watching. And we will see you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Oh, yeah, currently smoking or just finished. This is Neerup Hawkbill plus Argento Roots. And we